Okay, first of all, we'll start with our FFA chapter. So I would like to have Mrs. Funk and Mr. Hauser come up, and they will start with our FFA kids. They would like to recognize our state delegations and the kids who went to our state. We have our state tractor driving, our state FFA winners, convention winners. So if you guys would like to come on up.
Okay, so we'll start with our state FFA convention, which was July 6th through the 9th. And first of all, it was pretty neat because the state president who presided over the whole convention was a Preston County girl, Gabby Wolf, who graduated just a couple years ago. And we also had 10 students who received their state FFA degree, which is the highest award you can receive in West Virginia for FFA. So we have a couple of them here. So when I read your name, please stand if you're here. Jacob Hauser, Olivia Mitchell, Curtis Heilman, Molly Mazza, Hallie Volk, Madison Wolf, J.J. Reese, Jimmy Peasley, Addison Balliard, and Hunter Hirschman. So to get the state FFA degree, students have to earn and invest over $1,500 into their projects, as well as participate in 5 activities above the chapter level and have 25 community service hours. So, do you want to talk about anything else?
Another group that's represented is our agriculture issues competitors. And this contest was held June 1st at West Virginia State College. And we had 7 members participated in that. But the contest is about taking a issue that's somewhat controversial and presenting both sides of the issue. We don't reach a conclusion, and Brad invited us to come down from one of our public forums for this Rotary group, but we did go out to 5 different community groups and made a presentation. But our topic was green energy or fossil fuels, and it's how it related to agriculture in West Virginia as our presentation. So the members that participated, and by the way, we finished second. We were second to Buffalo by 1 point, which I was pretty proud of. Anyhow, we're excited. Next year, we're going to be the one that goes on to Indianapolis to represent our county and state. Those members were, and I'd like for you guys to stand too, Isabel Hauser, Emily Schillenberg, Addison Balliard, I'm sorry, no, not Carson Stone, Marley Phillips, Margot Serbo, Karen Belcher, who couldn't be here today, and Sophia Sereno. And real proud of this group. We had, during the time we were preparing, we had 4 of the girls were also headed to Charleston for their track events. So it was pretty tough getting kind of competitions in there. But, we're proud of the fact that so many of the contests we do at FFA are academic contests. It's fun to do athletics, but these are a little more challenging. When we get kids staying after school to prepare a speech or a presentation, that's pretty awesome because that's just an extension of what they do in the classroom, and we're proud to take these out and show them all. Thank you.
Mr. Hauser, I just want to concur. I think it was the first performance that they did for our Kingwood Rotary Club, and I just wanted to commend the kids. I thought they did an outstanding job, particularly with that being the first opportunity to present. So they did a great job.
We were still pretty rough and green at that point, so we got better.
Let's see. Oh, also at state convention, we recognized students who are candidates to get their American FFA degree. They should be approved by National FFA in August and receive their degree in October, and that would be Savannah Hauser and John Harris. We also had 9 voting delegates with us. Addison Balliard, and if you're here, stand up. Addison Balliard, Madison Balliard, Isabel Hauser, Connor Gibson, Jacob Hauser, Marley Phillips, Olivia Mitchell, Carson Castile, and Carson Stone. Those were our voting delegates, and they got to help elect the new state officers and vote on all of our state policy, everything like that. And Mr. Hauser, I'll let you talk about this one, since that one's near and dear to your heart. There.
Yes. Yeah, for many years, I guess ever since I've been an ag instructor, I've kind of taken a liking to the tractor driving contest. And we had 3 representatives that went to the state competition based on their regional wins. And in the large tractor driving contest, we had Connor Gibson and Connor Castile. And Connor, I'd like for you to remain standing. We also had Brent Bennett, who represented our region in school in the zero-turn lawnmower event. Proud to say that Connor Gibson was the West Virginia State winner, and he will go this fall in September to Springfield, Massachusetts, to participate in the national contest.
Awesome.
So we're pretty thrilled that he gets to do that. And I told Connor before we came in here, I said, I'm just going to ask for him to tell the group a little bit about what that contest entails and what he had to do to win it.
So there was probably 5 different little sections. One was a written test, that had 50 questions. Then there were 2 parts identification. One was on tractor parts, one was the inner engine parts. They had to identify. And there were 2 driving sections. One was a 2-wheel manure spreader, one was a 4-wheel wagon. If any of you know anything about wagons, they're very hard to back up. That's about it.
And he's being pretty modest, but Connor put the wagon in the shed on the first attempt with no change in directions. So that's pretty awesome. Thanks, Connor. What else you got?
I think that's pretty much all we have,
Can we get pictures?
unless anyone has questions for us or our members.
Would it be possible for you and the kids to come forward so we get a couple photos?
Sure.
Before you do that, I want to congratulate all of you. It was kind of neat. I don't know who put on Facebook the state champion. I knew that evening. I appreciated that tremendously, being able to see that, because we do need to recognize everyone. And that's, you guys represented us very well. And the fact we had a state president, pretty awesome.
Will there be a
So,
full, sorry,
yeah.
will there be a full delegation going to the national convention or just Connor?
Well, the national convention will be in Indianapolis the last week.
So the tractor driving is in a separate
Yeah, it's
location?
separate. I don't
Okay.
know why. I mean,
Yeah.
like your dad's son. It's always
Yeah,
been that way.
yeah.
We're hoping to bring kids to both, though.
Yes.
Yep. So, all right, kids.
Can I add something just real quick? The kids that are competing, these are not your upperclassmen. These are kids that are still coming up in the ranks, working towards, most of them are juniors, going into their junior year. But Connor competed as a freshman for a sophomore. You're going to be a sophomore, right? Okay, so that's exciting to see the program growing and that this amount of kids are, taking into these competitions that are going on. So we need all the support that they can absolutely get to move through the ranks as they head into their senior years.
Okay, guys. Okay.
Wait, guys, wait. Stay there.
Okay, we dropped.
That way. But it's all right.
Yes, yeah, free to
$5 a
go.
person, but yes. Thank you for coming.
Yes. Thank you all, parents. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Guys.
This is-
Check, check.
Check, check.
Check. Is mine on? Is mine on now?
Take this thing off.
I'll talk louder.
If I hit it harder, it works, Brad. Sorry.
We'll have to adjust the sensitivity.
I'm a lightweight.
Okay, our next group that we would like to recognize is our HOSA group, which is our health occupation students, which is our nursing classes at the high school. This group here was given the opportunity to go compete in Nashville on the national level. These guys were chaperoned by our nursing instructors, both Stephanie Martin and Amanda McCleary, and they were competed in the areas of the clinical specialty, which was plastic surgery, suturing, which is a self-taught skill, medical reading, healthcare display, and health education. And we had 8 students that were that went to nationals, and we had Piper, Slinka, Petka,
She's here.
Kathleen Annan, Sophia Taylor, and Madison Phillips, and Keely Gregory, Avery Adams, and Brooke Fisher. If you guys are here, if you would like to come up. And if you guys would like to tell them what you guys participated in and what you guys did, just tell them.
So, HOSA sent, thank you. HOSA sent 13 of us to our state leadership conference, which happened in March, and 10 of those 13 placed within the top 3 of the categories that they competed in. So then 8 of us went to Nashville, and we all competed on a national level. So most of these categories had 200, upwards of 300 people in each competition. The competition that I competed in, I had to pick a healthcare career. So I picked a surgeon, and as part of my project, I had to create a portfolio that was an interview with a surgeon, shadowing, and just all about the career and what that kind of implies, taking on that career. And I also had to demonstrate a skill from the chosen career, so I had to teach myself how to perform sutures as part of this, and I had to film this and then present it to the judges in Nashville. So I did this, and then in my category, so during the awards ceremony, I placed somewhere in the top 10. I don't know where, no one knows where. I placed somewhere in the top 10 within that category. I was competing against 250 people, and these were all people that were high school students and had the same project as well, different careers. And so basically I had to go into a room with the judges and present a speech and then show them this video and give them my portfolio, and then they had to go through the judging process and then grade me for the following day. So yes, that's what I participated in.
I participated in the health career display. I worked with a partner, and we presented a project on a sports medicine physician and what their role is and the types of injuries they treated. We didn't place within the top 10, but there were over 200 people participating. So we just gave an oral presentation on all the roles of a sports medicine physician and the credentials that you'll have to gain before going into the career.
I did medical reading, which is where you read 5 books and then you answer 10 questions on each of them. I don't know how many people I competed against, but yeah, that's what they did.
Great job.
Well, girls, it's a great accomplishment, what you were able to achieve at the national level, and we greatly appreciate you coming and sharing some of your experiences today. If you want to come up here, we'd like to maybe get a couple photos, and the board would like to
Yeah,
congratulate you as well.
Congratulations.
They're all running out of the background. Okay.
Kathy always comments about it, and I never think about it till I look at the pictures and there's blinds.
Just driving me insane. And the orange peel is not my.
And if those of you, if you're done there with that group, if you want to leave, feel free to leave as we go on with it. Congratulations. Thanks for representing Preston
Thank you.
High so wonderfully. Okay, the next is our delegations, which will be the model school board's presentation. So I'll let whoever's going to talk first talk. That'll be the easiest.
Well, I'd say that would be me. I have five folks here that came. We had a group of 6 that got together after the conference. While we were there, they just kind of volunteered and said they would be willing to come back and share some things with you all. As you know, we took 44 to this conference, and it's truly a fantastic event. So I won't go into any more details. I'll let them kind of tell you. We'll try to keep it short, but they are very excited and brought back a lot for you to see. So I'm going to start the PowerPoint, and we'll kind of work our way through that.
Board members, before we get started too, we also currently have a group, a contingent from Central Preston West and Terrata, who are currently attending the Visible Learning Conference in Denver, Colorado, and I believe Brewston as well, I'm sorry. And we'll certainly have a similar presentation upon their return as well.
So I'll go ahead and start with just the very beginning. And there's some of this, we sent this to you ahead of time, so you have this in written form. We have made a few edits since the last time that we sent it to you, but this is our group picture. It was just a really great group of people. They were all very enthusiastic and had a great time. So here we are on the surfboard. The theme was riding the wave, being a wave maker. So what is model schools? The beginning of this was created by Erica Phillips. She couldn't come today, but she was part of our team to get this ready. This, I won't read the whole thing to you because you have this, but it tells you the history of how it got started. And ICLE, which is the International Center for Leadership and Education. We do a lot of work with ICLE. They're here in our county now. They'll be with the Principals Academy. They're doing the curriculum design work that we're working on. They work with us with our coaching. We'll get into more of that later, but that's an educational leadership group that runs this conference. And so we have been kind of going there for several years. So this is where we started. There was a small group, and Michelle Berry, a couple of the instructional coaches went in 2018. They first heard about it through one of our textbook representatives, HMH. And they went, then the next year, a small group of us here from the county office, I mean, Darla was with us, Jan Miller, Steve Wattrain, Michelle, Barry, me, one other person. And we went to the conference in Washington, D.C., and from that conference, we brought back several things. We brought back Adam Drummond, who is now one of their senior partners, but he came
back and started working with our principals with some academic instructional leadership. And then we brought back some of the HMH math workshops because we were really struggling with our math instruction then. Then, of course, COVID happened, the conference went virtual, but we had quite a lot of people that did the virtual sessions. And then we went to, last year it was in Nashville, we had 32 people that went. Most of them were principals and coaches and a few teachers. Then we brought back the partnership with them to help us work with our principals. And since then, our principals have had individual, what we call executive coaching, but they have an ICLE coach that has worked with them throughout the year to help them prepare data for our data talks, to help them maximize their walkthroughs and what information they're gaining in their walkthroughs and those sorts of things. They are continuing that process through this year, and they'll be with us in a few weeks, next week at the Principals Academy. Gosh, it's coming fast. But they'll be here as well and continue that process. And we also brought back the RCD, which is where we've aligned our curriculum for all the math and reading, K-12, with unit guides and standard tests that everybody across the county is on the same page with. So then this year, we took 44 people, 22 of them were classroom teachers. And why I think that's so important is that there's something special about being there. There's something special about that. It reinvigorates you. You get that passion that just, it's a great experience, and they're going to have more to tell you about that. But I'm glad we were able to take our leaders, but I'm glad to see more and more teachers get to go participate in this. And while we do have our funding right now from ESERP that's designated for professional development, I think this is a fantastic way to grow our people while we have that funding and do that. So that's kind of the history of this conference. And then this talks a little bit about our dashboard that has all kinds of things. There's books that go along with the conference, lots of things that we get resource-wise from being able to attend. Okay, and I'm going to turn it over to them and let them go through and just kind of tell you, do you want me to man the slides or do you just hear it?
That'd be fantastic. Could you speak from the mic? Absolutely. Sure. You can actually see it over there. Thank you.
Let me introduce myself. My name is Renee Vrabel. I'm a fourth grade teacher at Preston School. This is my third year in Preston County and 25 plus years in education. Most of my experience prior to this has been in Ohio and in Michigan as well. So came to Preston County, relocated during a pandemic and started teaching at Preston School. I know they mentioned the books, and these are just 5 of the books. Each person came back with anywhere from 4 to 5 books. We are so grateful. I know Adam Drummond was mentioned, instructional change agent. I have Vanola Mason's Teaching Up, a STEAM STEM Make and Dream, Powered Data Teams, and the one I'm currently reading right now is by Eric Scheninger, which was one of our keynote speakers, and it's on disruptive thinking and invigorating things through personalized education in the classroom, as well as inspiring people to kind of think outside the box. So each person came back with quite a few books. We were really very, 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 very grateful to be able to purchase some books there, so thank you for that. This was my first year attending the Model Schools Conference. I attended 14 in-person sessions and 4 recorded sessions, and I have about 10 more that I want to attend that are online that I'm working on before the website disappears on us on the 1st. So working on those right now. It was great to see the transformative schools, the how-tos, some of the speakers of, we got to see people that you just wouldn't get to see otherwise. Interact with them, go up and talk to them personally, talk about engaging solutions for the problems that we might be encountering. Attending a conference online is a wonderful opportunity as well, but when you go in person, there's a certain synergy about it where you build upon everybody else around you that you just can't do in a typical chat session. So it was, when they say empowering to go to it, it was very empowering, very invigorating. And in a culture that we are in right now, my whole goal with going to this was to become a change agent to help people who are struggling in education today, whether it be staff, students, community. We faced a pandemic. We all know that. It was extremely challenging, and I've been in education a long time. I've been all different kinds of roles, from administrative to teachers to aide-type positions. And I'm seeing colleagues that are fabulous, wonderful teachers leaving in droves in Ohio, Michigan, New York, friends in Texas, friends in Colorado. To go to a conference like this and make my sole focus how to change that culture and reinvigorate the passion that's in other educators was extremely powerful. I couldn't pick between sessions. I'm sure I'm not alone on that. They'd have 20 opportunities and I had to pick one for that specific session. So it was kind of a puzzle game trying to figure out how to attend everything that I possibly could, and I have so much more to do with it still. Personal takeaways, you know what, bypass that, they can read that later. Those are just a few of the highlighted sessions. I'd like to talk specifically about Walter J. Baird Middle School, located in Nashville, Tennessee. Now, I'm an elementary school teacher, but I'm at Preston, and we do have pre-K all the way through the middle school grades. But I've also had experience in all of the different grade levels, both teaching and administration. So this is all about building your school community through deep social awareness, personalized interactions, and quarterly focused sessions. So the core principles were intentional faculty info, having focus Fridays, and then celebrating your people. Remember, my focus when going there was on how to bring things back to reinvigorate the staff around me, the students around me, the families around me. So this really spoke to me. So the first part of that is intentional faculty information. I know administrators get information, you get information on your principals, we get information on our students, and we kind of get the basics. This is going a lot deeper. It's going into the basic information, their address, experience, contact information, educational licensing with your staff, but then it's all about you. It's looking at family, their interests, their kids and ages, grandchildren they might have, functions they might be attending outside of school, getting to know them. The word love language is up there, which confuses a lot of people, so I put a chart in there over to the right. It's basically what motivates that person or what makes them feel appreciated, and everybody is different in that capacity, everybody. We may assume we know what makes them feel appreciated, but everyone falls in a different continuum. So this just gives you an idea of some of the areas that people hit that might make them feel more appreciated. For some, it's words of affirmation. Others need a physical hug, and that's what they need. Some need something tangible. Others, act of service where you're doing something with them or side by side with them with quality time. Understanding that with your staff members or your colleagues and your students and your parents helps you connect with them on a completely different level. I'll talk about Enneagrams in just a moment, and then we also have MBTI, emergency contacts, favorite things that the people like. Emergency contacts is not just for knowing who to contact in an emergency. You got a staff member that's doing great or a colleague that's doing great. You shout out, you give a call to their husband, you give a call to their wife. I just want you to know, your husband was an absolute rock star today in the classroom. I mean, they really rocked it out. 30-second phone call, and you've just completely changed the dynamic of not just that person, but maybe even something in their family. There's ways to do it. And then making professional and personal goals, both for the year and long term. Putting a survey out to people can be intimidating, but when the staff sees that it's truly, or your colleague sees, or your children see, or your students see, it's truly because you want to help them and lift them up even more, they tend to be a little less intimidated about doing that. The second component was Focus Fridays, which stands for Finding Opportunities for Career and Understanding Themselves. Now, I went to a middle school presentation, but everything that was done there can easily be adapted to the elementary level and then adapted also for high school level. So it's quarterly time to support the soft skills. A lot of times we downplay the soft skills that students need or that people in general need to survive in our world today. But if we support the soft skills, it results in increased self-awareness, college and career focus, stronger relationships, stronger connections, and all of those things help students even more to get a lot further in life. And you can adjust them based on the level. If you take a look at Focus Friday, it starts with has four clusters to it. There's self-awareness. It might have the MBTI, so the Myers-Briggs type testing, which I'm sure a lot of you are probably familiar with Myers-Briggs. Most people in the business world or in leadership positions have heard of that before. It's a type of a personality test that helps someone better understand how they think and why they think the way they think. There's also multiple intelligence, languages appreciation, I already talked to you about, Enneagram, I'll get to that in just a moment. Then focusing on career clusters. For our middle school and high school students, this is pretty critical. May or may not be a college pathway, but understanding what career options are out there, and then based on their personality, what jobs might actually fit that even more? Where can they excel in the greatest and have the most passion? Then getting ready for college and career. So this is looking at tests and extracurricular activities. When the FFA came in and presented here, it's building towards all of those components and pieces. In the younger grades, it might be as simple as just kind of knowing what's in their basic community, all the different jobs that exist in their community. Career day, personal stories from community members and networking, pulling in people from the community. So many good things come from that, not just helping the students, but that connection with the community, and then they feel a part of the school, and it's kind of like the synergistic idea of 1 + 1 = 3. That's what happens when you do these kinds of things.
And I know Brewston does that with the, I know the School
We
for
have a
Hard
wonderful
Knocks,
community.
they usually do in the spring.
And Joni, who is our community schools person, is fabulous, and she's building even more. So
What's good, the elements
I'm
are already.
hoping we'll be able to be a model school coming down the path here soon. The third component is celebrating your people. So, like I said, my focus when I went there is on how to uplift staff. So they want to stay in education and pull others along too, to pull them into education. We're coming into a situation where we have a shortage of teachers. We're already there. It is going to magnify exponentially over these next 10 to 15 years. People just don't want to go into education. They see all the stuff that's happening. If we can turn that around within our own buildings, I think we can turn it around and have a domino effect to pull more people in. So if you're celebrating people, whether it be your staff, your students, your family, community members, it's all about being relentless in seeking out each person's greatness. Sometimes that's hard to do with people. We all know that. You come against somebody who's combative and negative and nasty, and there's greatness there. And it's a matter of finding it. I know people tend to do more who are appreciated, and I know we know that too. So it's looking at things like Be the One, where students recognize teachers that have been the one to change something for them. Publicly recognizing, or publicly recognizing a student who was the one that made a difference for somebody else, and letting students be the one to verbalize those things. Staff celebrations on a regular basis. I think overall we're pretty good about doing those kinds of things. Teacher of the Year letters, but not from an administrator, from a parent, from a student, from community members, from people who have experienced the teacher maybe in a different way. But people who feel valued and respected will always do more. I won't go through every single one of these things, but I came back with probably 50 to 70 ideas on things that can be immediately implemented to turn those kinds of things around. So why do this? People say, well, it sounds all touchy-feely. Why do this? Why does it matter? What's the impact? If we look at the emotional quotient, if you look at that graphic up in the upper right-hand corner, your intelligent quotient, which is what we focus very heavily on with the academic pieces. Then it's your emotional quotient, and then your personality. All of those combined are really what makes up the whole person. Any one of those pieces is askew or not recognized, the other pieces don't thrive. So if you look at the stats that I have on the left-hand side there, 90% of top performers in the workplace have a high emotional quotient. 90% of the top performers do. But the ones that are in the lowest performing category, only 20% of them do. It's a huge impact if we can work on the emotional quotient for our students and our teachers, our leaders, our staff. Workers with a high EQ have a 58% higher performance rating in the workplace. We know that's longevity. So if we're focusing on our staff members and we are taking time to work on that emotional quotient, not just with our staff and students, but everybody in our community that we come in touch with, anyone you come in touch with, you can do this. So if we can work on that, and it's 58% higher performance, what can Can you imagine what it would be if we did that with all of our staff members? The kind of effectiveness that we've had, that we could have, and then if we did it with our students, the kind of impact that that will have on their lives and how effective they are even in the classroom and outside of school. If you take a look at this quote by Daniel Coleman is a nationally recognized psychologist. If your emotional abilities aren't in hand and you don't have self-awareness, if you're not able to manage your distressing emotions, which we see a lot of children having that happen with all of the pandemic and the traumas they face. If you can't have empathy and have effective relationships, then no matter how smart you are not going to get very far. And that is so true. We relate to humans in so many different levels.
Thank you.
And if any of you would like, we have done some updates to the slides just last minute, so if there's slides that you want that you don't have, I'll be happy to print this for you.
When I send the minutes, Brenda, if we can have that, I can include that in the
And I
minutes.
actually have a few slides I deleted that explains Enneagram, and I actually thought I put that in there, but it's not in there. Enneagram is a personality survey that has 9 different types of personality pieces. And it's kind of surprised it didn't pop up. That's okay. It's okay, it's not a big deal. So an Enneagram is similar to the Myers-Briggs, only it goes a lot more in depth. And it can tell us the kind of learner a student is, the kind of teacher a person is, what makes them tick, what rubs them the wrong way, what makes them soar, what lifts them up. By doing something like that with staff, you can get to know your staff on a much deeper level. And I'd be more than happy to send those slides out because I'm seeing that they didn't make it. I'm one of the people that did some last minute changes. I've been out of town for a while. So, as far as the Enneagram goes, the middle school also took the Enneagrams and they had their staff do it so the staff could all get to know each other a lot better on a much deeper level. You know exactly who needs what type of appreciation, who needs lifted up in some way, who needs talk, who needs just for you to sit back, be quiet, let them process and stand alongside. And then what kinds of kids work well with those teachers also. Not that children shouldn't come in contact with all different kinds of personalities, but when you're trying to meet 2+ year gaps with children on specific standards, and you take that child and you break the kids up into these groups, and you put them with a teacher that matches their Enneagram style, they soar. The percentages are astronomical in how fast they learn that material. When they meet up with somebody who has a similar Enneagram style and understands that style well. And that middle school did that on a large scale. I'm looking to start that on a small scale, and I have a couple other teachers that are going to be working with me on it, as well as some vertical alignment between a couple different grades. We're going to try and see kind of how this works and what this might do to Brewston on a small piece, and then hopefully we can take it a little bit larger from there. Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Vrabel, thank you for your presentation. Just what is your role at Brewston?
I'm sorry?
What is your position at Brewston?
I'm a 4th grade teacher.
4th grade teacher. Thank you.
Yes.
So my purpose in attending model schools was we're moving into this SEL arena now, and that seems to be this big focus. But we still have these looming test scores and all of this curriculum and academics that they seem to be competing for time, and time is a limited resource. So I know that we're doing so many things that are good things, but we're just kind of happening upon them. And if we can be this good unintentionally, then what can we do if we focus intentionally? So this is actually a picture of a sheep's brain that we dissected in one of the sessions. And the people that attended from Kingwood specifically tried to attend different sessions because we wanted to make the most out of our experience. So the people who were sitting at this table were from 6 different states, 6 different academic areas. The only instruction that we had from the leader was she gave us a little bit of background on the physical parts of the brain. She talked to us about respecting the sheep's brain. A sheep gave its life for this. Talked to us about, there were some roles flashed on the screen. You had to choose your role, and that was pretty much it. You have 20 minutes, figure out what you need to figure out. Didn't talk to us about what we were looking for, nothing. And so I was the encourager. I was not going to hold the scalpel. Actually, we had a lady who was really, really excited to hold the scalpel, and I don't think I would have fought with her. So we dissected this brain, and the lady who conducted the research was so fascinating. I attended 2 of her sessions, and I've actually attended her sessions in prior years. But she has turned me on to these other books, and so now I'm also in the process of reading more about this. So one of the things that we were talking about is the conditions, and just like Renee talked about, the conditions of our classroom teachers right now. It is a pressure cooker. And when teachers are stressed, it is contagious, and students are stressed. And we know that for students to be able to learn efficiently and effectively, stress doesn't play a part in that. If there is a productive stress that plays a part in it, but excessive stress is counterintuitive. So learning should be joyful. And in looking at this, it's all about relationships once again. So here's that SEL stuff coming into play. You need to know your students beyond just the faces that come to school in front of you. You need to know what their interests are, where they come from, what their families are like. There was a strategy called the 2x10 method, and that's where you spend 2 minutes every day with 10 different children talking about something that is non-academic. Next one. Research on greeting. Now this is what I get into, all of model schools and all of ICLE is research-based, and that's my dig. So when they start giving me statistics, that's where I shine. So just greeting the students at the door increases the on-task time for the next 10 minutes. Next one. Being kind increases dopamine, serotonin. It also produces endorphins, which that's your painkillers for the body. So when you're kind, you're starting to get those feel-good things. Compassion. This was the one, allows for a much more deliberate or discerning response, allowing your executive control area to function at its best. And this is where the meat is. Next one. So these are the major areas of your brain. If you see the Rubik's Cube, that is the frontal lobe, and that is where the prefrontal cortex lives. That is where the teachers, all the teaching, we are trying to control that prefrontal cortex to help kids learn as much as they can. The executive functioning skills live in the prefrontal cortex. Take a look. That's everything kids have to do to be successful in life. So if we're putting the brain, if we're creating the right situations for the brain to learn efficiently, and that is in a relaxed, joyful environment, then we're working smarter, not harder. Hit it again. So no longer are we pouring knowledge into a brain. Go ahead. We are making the conditions right, again, for the brain to work efficiently. One more time. And that's what the brain looks like when they are measuring the activity in the brain, and that's where all sections of the brain are firing.
Ms. Ziegler, what is your position at Kingwood?
Oh, so sorry. I'm principal at Kingwood
Principal. Okay, thank you, sorry, I didn't know that.
All right, so.
If you guys wouldn't mind maybe just doing a quick introduction when you come in as to who you are, where you work.
So my name is Aubrey Watching. Some of you may know me as Aubrey Hall. I graduated from Preston High in 2013. I teach ninth grade Earth and Space Science, and this coming school year will actually be my second full year of teaching. So I'm still getting my teaching legs. I attended 12 sessions in person. I missed kind of the last keynotes because I had to leave for my flight. And those ranged from like the different categories that they had. And I've also viewed 10 of those recorded sessions and the materials that went along with that. Renee had mentioned that a lot of us are doing that, and that's such a helpful resource to have that, because they give you all of the timeline and you had to pick and choose what you could make it to. So that's a great resource for us to have that we wouldn't necessarily have before. Those are the books that I had. I got 4. I'm in the process of reading them all. You can go ahead and hit that. So I'm just gonna keep this short and just tell you my key takeaways. Since I'm so new at teaching, the things that were hardest for me are like the standards and like figuring out what those mean and what's important. And something that they really talked a lot about at one of the sessions I went to that was like the light bulb moment was the vertical alignment. So we did this in the science class or the science PD days last year, but it really helps to reorganize like the way that you look at it. So what they did is they brought this chart up and they had kindergarten through 12th grade. And if they're talking about parts of a cell, they would have any standard in those grade levels that are directly related to that. So I thought that was helpful to kind of see what the elementary kids in middle school are coming with and what they need to know for 10th grade biology. I also went to Re-Energizing Your Lesson Plan with Tara Gall, and that was phenomenal. It emphasized what was essential for the kids to move on. And it shifted my perspective of my standards, because something she focused on was they're already grouped on the website, and if you just choose one of those to be your priority, and then the rest can support, and I was like, wow, that makes it so much easier, because a lot of the stress that my colleagues have been talking about, at least for me, was trying to decode those standards. I was like, oh man, had no idea what I was doing. So some personal impacts is I do feel inspired and energized. Given last year as my first year, I still am new and I don't have as much experience as my other colleagues here, but it really helped me kind of be like, all right, this is what I need to do. So for this year, I'm feeling a lot better. It also validated me as a new teacher, because a lot of the things that I have in my brain of what teaching should be, I don't necessarily see that, whether good or bad, but it kind of validated that I was on the right track with what I'm doing in my classroom and where I'm at. And it made me feel a little more confident, so I'm ready to get my stuff planned, and I'm ready to tackle 2022-23 school year. So I appreciate the opportunity to go, because it's opened my eyes way more than any online or anything else could have. Thanks.
Thank you.
Audrey, by the way, is one of our shining stars, and she's always full of energy, and I do appreciate, she is so hungry to learn, and she takes feedback and utilizes it. She is a joy to work with, so I just want to let you know that as well. I'm Todd Seymour, I'm the principal at Preston High School, and I got to attend model schools last year and this year. It's just a wealth of information. I've been taking the last 3-4 weeks, just digesting it, going through, making notes, getting my opening speeches for school ready, using those notes. And it has really been helpful to help me focus. I attended the 14 sessions, and the 4 areas that I kind of focused on this year, and the number one for sure was instructional leadership. And the number 2 right behind it is shaping school culture, continuous improvement, and then safety. And there's the list of my books that I bought from that. You can read that go ahead. So, instructional leadership. When Mr. Watering hired me, he said, Todd, I need an instructional leader, and I think you're the man for the job, and that's what I'm going to be. I'm going to be an instructional leader. And I went to the session on pedagogical leadership, which focuses on what the learner is doing, not so much what the teacher is doing. And so it's kind of a shift in thinking that a lot of times when we go in and do observations or walkthroughs, we look at the teacher and see what they're doing. What we really need to do is we need to look at the learner and see if they're learning. And that's what we're going to be measuring this year through our walkthroughs and our observations and our evaluations. We want to have continuous improvement. We've got to increase rigor and relevance and monitor instruction. And the key is giving the immediate feedback, meeting with the teachers and saying, here's the goods, here's the bads, and how can we get the bads to the goods. Being a change agent is another one that I went to, and the one thing that really stuck me was be better today than you were yesterday. So if you can improve just day by day, little by little, by the time you get to the end of the year, you'll see a vast improvement. And then, again, the power of formative assessment, just constantly evaluating, teaching teachers how to self-evaluate, teaching students how to self-evaluate, and know what to do. And then there's some things there. So school culture. Now, I'll just tell you, the biggest thing I got from model schools on, if you don't tell your story, someone else will. And most of the time, it's not accurate if somebody else tells the story. So this year, plain and simply, we're going to toot our horn. We're going to let people know what's going right at Preston High. And on our school culture, you reshape that and remold that with vision, mission, core values. I'm working on that, working with my admin team, meeting with parents, meeting with other people to make sure that the mission, the vision, the core values of Preston High is what Preston County people want, the community wants. Are we producing citizens that can go out and make a difference in their world? And that's what we have to do at Preston High. We're going to be taking surveys, building those relationships with all stakeholders. One thing I'd like to do is celebration. If you see that Knights Award, it's just something I came up with. For a teacher especially who just does something really great, I thought it would be great to recognize them and give them a little shield, like a shield as a knight would carry, and just give them a Knights Award. Something like that would be one example of how we could use and utilize celebrations. We need to rebrand. We have to come up with a good slogan. And we're not going to have committees this year, because to me the word committee means you sit, you meet, you maybe eat, you talk about some stuff, and then you walk out. We're going to call them action teams, because that's what we expect. We expect that coming out of those meetings, there should be action and progress being made. So we're not going to have any more committees. We're going to have action teams. That's one thing, again, that I think is going to be helpful. The next slide talks about continuous improvement, and you've got 4 visuals there. Rethinking normal. So here's where the rubber meets the road. What we've done before hasn't worked, hasn't produced the results we want. So if we continue to do what we did before, we're still going to get poor test scores, plain and simply. Now, is it all about test scores? No. But that's part of it, absolutely. That's what the state looks at. Yes, we've got to do the soft skills as well. We've got to do the SEL, but our test scores are not good, plain and simply. And if we think we can continue to do the same thing and get better results, that's not going to work. So we have to rethink what is normal, what we have to continually improve. We have to get that. And it goes to the disruptive thinking. I didn't get a chance to get the book. You guys all bought it before I could get it. I'll get one. There's this thing called Amazon. But so you know, and that's just it. Disruptive thinking talks about replacing conventional thinking with innovative solutions and authentic problems. We have some instructional problems. We need solutions. I'm going to give my teachers the okay to be innovative, creative. Just keep me in the loop on what you're doing. But we have to be able to provide them the resources they need too. So some of this is going to take some money and some resources. Students, personally, I don't think we challenge them enough. When I was in the classroom, I would always, here's what I would, why do we have to learn this, Mr. Seymour? You know, we always get that question. My answer was always, listen, I know that some of you don't think you'll ever use this stuff, but we all know that when you get in the real world, I was a math teacher, you're going to use math, okay? But here's what I would tell them. I would say, listen, I said, my number one responsibility as a teacher is to prepare you to be ready to go out in the world and make a difference. And I said, ultimately, my responsibility is to teach you how to think, because you're going to have to solve problems the rest of your life. Now, in this environment, I use math to help you learn how to think. And that's what we have to do. We have to help students learn how to think on their own, not rote memory. And that's one of the things this disruptive thinking talks about. And then you can see there's some visuals on how to change and the process of that. I won't go over that. You can read that. Then I went to the active safety one. Whoa, former FBI agent. And there was just a wealth of information that I can't wait to talk to Officer Lewis about. And Mike Bittinger and I have already been talking about some things on how to make the school a little bit more secure and safe. But he said the number one most critical component in any emergency or crisis is the human component, because humans are making decisions. And the more information we can give our teachers and our staff and our students about situations, the better off we'll be when we get in those situations and have to make those decisions in an instant. He also says, control what you can control. I counted the doors before graduation because I wanted to make sure the seniors couldn't get in and do a senior prank, so I checked all the doors and windows. 63, I think. One night I got 63 and the other night I got 64. But there's 64 exterior doors with locks and handles on them. That's a nightmare. And I mean, I'm sure you've all been to the school where you've seen a door propped open. And that's what happened in Texas. And that's just not acceptable. And it's not going to be acceptable this year. And I'm going to try to let the teachers know. We're going to try to make sure every student comes in through the Great Hall / concourse every day instead of his buddy letting him in somewhere else throughout the school. We're going to lock the doors. And those little door wedges, the FBI goes, if I see another one of these, he goes in and consults in schools. And the first thing he does, he goes and takes them all and throws them away. If a door needs to be opened, somebody physically needs to be there to open it. And if you need to send a student outside the building for any reason, then they better go in twos, because one's got to stay by the door to open it to get them back in. So another thing he said, everyone should have some kind of identifier on them. And he said, it's amazing how many times people aren't challenged in the building just walking around. I try to challenge everybody I don't know. And sometimes, so challenge strangers. And this was interesting. He said, tools every classroom should have. A mini sledgehammer was the first thing he said. Because in an emergency, if you can't get out the door, you may have to break the windows. Now, I guess you could probably try to use chairs and stuff like that, but mini sledgehammer, fire extinguisher, and an air horn. And, so that was there. Now, earlier, Ms. Layton talked about the executive partnership we have. So last year, I had Terry Clem as my personal coach, So we met throughout 2021, 22 for coaching, strategizing, data, and looking over everything, getting ready. What are we going to do for 2023? And one of the things we came up with was this next school year, we are going to do a staff-wide book study on shaping school culture. So I bought all the editions already for everybody. I passed some of them out. Anyone who wanted to have it for summer reading, I gave that to them. I'm working through the book now. I don't get very far because I can take notes all the time and writing things down, and it takes me on rabbit trails. But it's good. I mean, it's a lot of good information. And we're going to do whole group and small group, and I think she's coming 10 times to do this. So we're setting up those things, but I know that model schools has helped me over the last 2 years. It will continue to help me. ICLE is a great resource. You know, they've mentioned the dashboard. That dashboard goes down September 1st, I think it is, isn't it? And like they said, there's other seminars that I couldn't get to, workshops that I couldn't get to, but a lot of that stuff is on there that we can watch. So that's good. And it's worth the investment. I will just say that. So thanks for sending me.
Can I jump in here real quick, Mr. Seymour? Can you get a copy of the book, The Shaping School Culture, for each of the board members that are interested in it? And then also, can we be included in future meetings that you give us updates on that, or
Yipper,
involve us in that process?
I can do that.
Thanks.
Okay, it looked prettier before. This is a lot to take in, right? I agree. I had a really hard time choosing what to put in there, so I tried to kind of like keep to the main point. I teach 4th grade at West Preston. My name is Sarah Rose, and I'm starting my 9th full year there, so it's been a day. When I started teaching there, I had just graduated from the Benedum program, so that's been 10 years ago when Benedum was like in its height. And I felt pretty good about like the lesson planning and the standards and reading and math and all that, but now in the past 5 years or so, I have found myself saying a lot, no one taught me how to do this, or like this is not what they taught us in college. So that brings me to several different points. Mine was a lot of the connection, and when I went to model schools, I was in the middle of a book study at West Preston with like a small group of teachers. It's called Kids These Days. That might be one you might be interested in as well. But it's all about connection, and I know that some of you have already talked about that and how important that is. But the lady that wrote it is a child psychologist. So I think that kind of like pushed which sessions I chose and which direction that I went when I was at the conference. The man you see in the picture right there, his name is Rick Rigsby, and he was very inspiring. There was a lot of laughing, then we were tricked and there were tears. But I ordered a lot of the books that they showed you, and then I also went on Amazon and ordered a whole lot more. His were those too, so I wanted just to point that out. There's a quote at the corner that says, "Teachers have the power to change lives, use it wisely." And I think that this takes on a new meaning with each personality that you meet up with through the classroom, whether it's a kid or another teacher. But focusing on connection with kids and trying to take care of them. I have a picture in the corner also of Maslow's hierarchy, which is like the things that children need in the order they need them in. In other words, it's really hard to take care of safety if they don't have basics like food, water, and sleep. So I know that we've done a lot in the past several years to control the food. You know, we bring them in for meals, we send meals home, but there's only so far we can take that control. And so then it comes to those next three, because I think that sometimes those are the hardest. Sometimes safety becomes the hardest, because I know you said that you went to active shooter, and I did as well. I tried not to repeat what he said because you had a lot of information, but I took additional things from it as well. Things like, we have drills, we've done that, it's been a few years, but he pointed out drills aren't really what we're looking for in the moment. That may not be the thing that can help save kids. He talked about things like different style doors than what we have in the classrooms at West anyway. I'm not sure about the other buildings. Empowering staff to be able to make the call that there could be a crisis happening and we need to lock down.
And then sounds, which he said that it's unlikely that anyone should know what gunfire sounds like in your building. That makes sense. But I'm kind of wondering why we can't explore that. I don't see why we couldn't partner up with law enforcement in some facet and know what it sounds like using blanks inside and outside each school building. If we know what to listen for, then maybe we can do something to stop it. So those were just additional things that I took on top of what Mr. Seymour said. I completely skipped the first one. So mental health supports was led by a medical doctor from Brown University, and I had so many pages of notes on hers that eventually I stopped and wrote down rewatch. But it scared me, and it scared me because she talked very specifically about signs that we should be looking for with children as far as like suicide, and it scared me because I didn't realize how many kids I've had in class the past few years that were displaying all of those symptoms, and I missed it. Fortunately, I checked on all those kids from the conference. I texted their parents, and they're fine. So nothing has happened thus far. But that was a little bit more eye-opening than the interactive thing that we do online at the beginning of every year. So I was grateful to be able to hear that because now I have a list of specific actions that I can take to try to help with that. The third one down was Dr. Keeley, and it was called Problems Are a Gift. And those are a lot of those moments of, like, they didn't teach me this, or now what? What do I say to this kid when they're in the height of this moment? And there were just a few important takeaways from that. One of them was just they become what we say they are. So, like, we have this power with students, and it's important to use it wisely and try to build them up in the ways that they need. The last one was supposed to be about reading achievement, and that was a school in, I believe it was Alabama, Brubaker Primary. And yes, they boosted their data, but it started off being all about connection. They talked about using Chick-fil-A style service, and I think most of us are familiar with that. And another one was not encouraging home involvement, but expecting it. And I thought that was a different way of phrasing it. So anyway, I just took a lot away from this conference. It helped bring back the moments of no one taught me this, or, you know, this is not what I signed up for. So your money that was spent to send me was well worth it. So thank you.
Thank you.
One comment for you with the sound. That was done at Preston High School several years ago. We actually brought the police officers in. It was on a faculty senate day. So they will work with us in the school system to do that because it does sound different. You know, our kids, we grew up in Preston County. We know what guns sound like, but it is different inside of a building. And they did do that. And that's something Mr. Martin, I'm sure, could arrange with the officer. But it does sound different. I mean, you wouldn't think it does, but it does.
It makes sense. It sounds a lot different, and it's not, really as alarming as when you hear it outside.
My mom told me that, my mom works in Mon County schools, and they did a similar training, and when the high school had that scare last year, she sent me like a list of things in a text message, and she said it literally sounds like you have a stack of books and you dropped them. And I'm like, oh, wow.
He mentioned that. Well, now they're suppressed return option. And it changed the way that I thought about, like, power that I may actually have to do something in the moment versus whatever drill we've gone through where we throw things at the shooter and hope that we hit him first.
And just to finish up, how's this going to impact us this year? On August 17th and August 18th, when our teachers come back, the 17th, we have a pretty much set schedule, but on the 18th, we have what we call Choice Day. And we just give teachers a whole menu of things to choose from. These 5 sessions came from model schools. Todd is here with us. But in addition to this group, we have presenting with Vanessa Hayes talking about personalized instruction. Becky Herko is talking about Quad D instruction and the rigor rubric. Kelly Murray is talking about mathematical mindsets. And Sarah Wall's going to do a section on sketching. So all of this came from the conference as well. I talked to you a little bit about these are the things that we're doing this year that came from that conference or that partnership with them, Karen Cable and Larry Clem, or our coaching partners for our administrators. The year-long relationship work with PHS obviously take this much time. I know it was long, but I'm so happy that these 5 people came and wanted to share with you what they've learned. You saw 5 different people from 5 different perspectives. We took 44 and they all went to 12 to 15 sessions apiece. We could do this for days and go through all the things that we went through, but it's just such a great opportunity. We thank you all for sending us. Our goal is that we are going to be a model school, hopefully this coming year. So we've had a couple schools that have jumped in. We've talked about it as a district, because at model schools, you have the professional leaders from throughout the country, but then they take model schools from throughout the country and the schools themselves present what they're doing. So our goal is to be a presenter next year at the Model Schools Conference. So thank you, guys.
And Ms. Layton, I just want to thank you and the presenters here today. It's much appreciated. I know the board, I'm sure, appreciates the feedback from some of the significant professional development offerings that our teachers are attending. You know, again, we have a group in Denver now, and we'll certainly ask for similar presentations moving forward. But thank you, and thank all of our presenters today as well.
Is there a compiled list of the 42 attendees and all of the sessions that each one attended, so that as a resource to other teachers, educators, administrative staff, as far as who attended, that we could also see?
We didn't collect that data, but I can ask. Each individual person has an app or the dashboard, as they were talking, and that builds your personal schedule, but there's no way for me as like an administrator to see what everyone else went to, other than passing each other in the hallways and kind of waving. It's really easy to find everybody when we wore Preston County shirts, but the other days it was a little. So we met once a day while we were there. I could just send out an email and ask them to kind of get that together and share it out.
I could see that being, I mean, again, for a small representation went, so for our teachers to know, hey, I'm interested in this area, and knowing the people that went to each area and having that as a resource, but it would also be of interest to us to see how much time was spent per subject matter, you know, sessions and things like that.
Okay.
But currently, there's no coordination from administration as far as, in the corporate world, when we would go to a large convention, you would look at the agenda of what was available, and we would assign specific areas, saying, we need somebody here, we need this delegation to do this. Currently, this was all free-for-all, just on individual preference.
It wasn't a free-for-all. We actually met prior to the conference, and we had a couple different sessions to talk about, but it was designed so that each school, because every school is so different, that they all went to the things that fit their needs.
Right.
It wasn't designed for me to direct them where to go, no.
Yeah, we currently don't delegate any specific area to any specific party.
Well, it's not really the way it's set up.
Yeah,
no.
okay.
Yeah.
That's fine, just
Yep.
understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I can speak to that just a little bit as well. For example, I built my schedule before I went. I went online, watched little vignettes of, little teeny snapshots of everything that was being presented to figure out what I want my schedule to look like. And then on the very first day there, met with some other colleagues that I work with or that are from some other buildings in similar grade levels. And we sat down and looked at each other's schedules and said, okay, well, this topic, we might need 2 people at this topic because there's going to be a lot of information with this topic and there's several other presentations that go along with it. And we adjusted our schedules for that. The other adjustment that was often made, and I've heard other people saying the same thing, is I walked into some sessions and at the beginning of the session, they give you a brief overview of what they're going to cover. And sometimes it didn't necessarily match up to what the research ahead of time said it was going to be. And I thought,
That happens a lot.
this is not at all what I need or what my cohorts are going to need. And I literally got up, walked out, and went to another presentation. So even our schedules online might not match up to what people actually went to see if they made adjustments like that. So it was not necessarily a free-for-all. And then we sat down and, like, for example, the information I'm taking back to Jonas. And then we're going to sit and talk with the leadership team of this is what I learned, this is what can we do here at Preston. I know what I'm going to do immediately in my room, and my 4th grade colleagues have already agreed to some of the stuff too. But then what can we branch out and teach other people? It's not about coming back and keeping it to yourself. It's very much about coming back and how many people can you empower.
Thank you.
Renee, thank you for expanding on that, because I think that's a consistent experience from attendance at a lot of these professional development conferences. And, I know just from our days, even when we go to, like, for example, the ASA, where we're kind of talking internally, like, let's make sure you go here and we'll cover another session so that we have adequate coverage with, particularly when we have a smaller number of participants, we really try to stretch our resources as much as possible.
I would like to add that, we are well aware that the morale is, at an all-time low. And it's so nice to see a spark in your eyes. And I just really hope and pray that you can go out and spread that. And whatever help you need from this board, I think I can speak for all of us. Whatever you need from us to go out and spread that, like, that's what we need. And thank you guys for going.
Anything else? Okay, moving on. I'll take a,
Excuse them.
if you guys, you're welcome to stay. Thank you. You don't have to, it's just like the regular teacher. You guys sit there till the teacher dismisses you. Thank you. I couldn't resist. Moving on. I'm trained.
Thank you.
Moving on, I take a motion to accept the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, call for the vote.
You didn't ask for discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry. You need to,
I don't think
I
I
already
already had
messed
it.
up the discussion.
No discussion?
No discussion?
Okay, voting is now open.
Sorry, I forgot.
Oh, they would have spoke up. It's my job. Keep you straight.
Yep.
Motion passes 5-0.
Next on the agenda will be the minutes. Can I have a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting for July 11th?
I'll make that
2022?
motion.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Any discussion from the minutes or corrections? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Okay, voting is open. Okay, motion passes 5-0.
Next will be the superintendent's report.
Okay. I tried to include some items, some physical copies of some of the items that I'm going to
you. I
reference in
appreciate
the
that.
purple folder.
Yes.
A few things, guys. Summer school and extended school year sessions will be concluding this Thursday. From my understanding, they'll be completing either iReady or Exact Path testing here at the end of summer to determine any student gains that have been made over the last 6 weeks. PHS Band is conducting their annual band camp this week, and I believe that concludes Friday. Also, PHS and some middle school fall sport athletic practices will begin next week on Monday, August 1st, with programs offering varied practice times and locations. The shuttle bus, we kind of have a different setup, guys. We have a summer bus schedule, and then we have once school starts, we have an activity bus that leaves out of here at approximately 6. We'll operate on those summer hour, or the summer practice schedule, I believe, from August 1st through the 16th. Then once employees start back, we'll shift to the typical after-school practice model. And the packets, or the schedule for the summer practices, I believe, are in your packets. I did want to indicate that I felt we had a very successful a new teacher orientation session back, what was it, Mrs. Varner? It was about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. I believe we had about between 20 and 25 of our new teachers, and I believe we had one service personnel here as well. We thought it went very well. They had an opportunity to hear presentations from the various teacher unions. They also were given introductions to the central office directors and staff. They were also given an opportunity to, again, there was a Schoologies course that we were able to set up where we were able to incorporate a lot of concepts and topics that they're going to certainly need to review prior to the start of the year. We didn't necessarily deliver that all in that point in time because we're trying to keep it in a roughly a half-day setting. So that gives them an opportunity to kind of, at some point, to kind of go through a lot of that content at a more self-paced, but prior to the start of the year. We are going to have another of those sessions. I believe that is Friday, August 12th, for additional staff members who were unable to be there on that date. So, but we were very pleased. We've really, kind of had various formats for the new teacher and staff member orientation, but I felt like overall that was a pretty good model and seemed to be pretty effective. The Principals Academy is actually scheduled for this coming week at Blackwater Falls State Park. It's actually going to begin on Sunday, July 31st, and will conclude on August 3rd. A tentative agenda was included in your packets as well for your review. We will have principals, assistant principals, deans, academic coaches, and most central office directors will be available for sessions in line with district strategic plans and goals. The planned agenda, as I said, was with your packet. As I mentioned earlier, we do have a group from Central West, I think Brewston and Terralta, who are currently attending the Visible Learning Conference in Denver. We will follow up with that group, and really, I think the group today set a very good standard for future groups to come in as expectations for presentations of that nature following a major professional conference. And again, thank you, guys. I did want to reference, and Mr. Murray will probably allude to this a little later, the bid opening for the scheduled paving projects took place on the 20th last week. We had 8 firms represented that. I think, Mr. Murray, we were very pleased with the number of firms who had expressed interest, and that is included as a voting item today with specifics as to the vendor and cost associated. And Matt may refer to that a little later. The gym floor renovations are nearing completion as well. And Matt, correct me, right now they're finishing up at Terralta, correct? The other 5 sites, I believe, are completed. I think, we're going to obviously try to get some promotions out on it. I think the finished products really, really look excellent. So we're excited for the start of the year that our gym spaces. One thing that I'll be working with administrators, though, is some preventative steps to keep those in good working order. In fact, that, food and drink being available in the gym, we think that's a process we really should probably look to discontinue. Also, looking at shoes in terms of gym shoe usage, and also efforts to rope off the main gym floor to keep, pedestrian walkways around the exterior of the gyms. We think if we put a lot of those things in place, we'll keep those facilities looking nice long term. One item I do want to afford the board is we've had, Mr. Murray had received reports of concerns with the conditions at the old West Preston field in Masontown. The exterior bleachers. There have been some concerns. Currently, based on preliminary inspection, we do not have, those are basically blocked off and they're not in use currently. We did have a firm come in last Friday, Aero Engineering out of Morgantown, to conduct an assessment of the current conditions. We were recommended to get a structural engineer for that. So that firm should be turning around a report in the near future so that we can make a proper advisement to you guys as to whether those bleachers can be continued to use safely, if we need to make any potential fixes to those bleachers to allow them for further use, or if it would be cost prohibitive, the process if we would have to eventually get rid of those bleachers. So we're hoping with this report we can make a more informed decision as to how to proceed moving forward out there. Custodial crews continue to work. We have 14 summer custodians hired, 11 additional 240. Working to get the buildings ready, I know, and I'm sure Mr. Murray will also kind of allude to some of the progress they're making in the schools as well. Did want to touch base, the technology department has been preparing laptops and iPads for the coming year. Right now, Mr. Sines indicated they have approximately 1,800 laptops are prepared for the coming year. He has about 450 existing devices. Some of those are coming in from summer school this week. Some students who were in summer school retained their devices, so we'll collect those. I believe the collection point is either Wednesday or Thursday of this week. We'll be going around picking those up at defined locations around the county. We're anticipating 750 additional laptops. We're hopeful that those will be delivered later this week. And Mrs. Moyers, I know you're in the planning stages for the work on get the iPads prepped for the year, and we're probably looking at next week.
It depends on when the new is starts.
Okay. Right now, and one thing I should address too is the WEVA system, or the West Virginia Educational Information System, has done a conversion. We've used that system approximately for 30 years. They have migrated the content from that platform to a new system called WEVAS 2.0. It's a big learning curve with this. Mrs. Layton I know has tried to immerse herself in some of the changes there lately as well. Ultimately, I think it will be a good thing. There's a big learning curve with this right now, and we're trying to obviously work through those, much like many other districts around the state. I know that Mrs. Moyers, Mrs. Layton, we had made arrangements for Nanette Argabright from the state WEVAS. She's the state Weavis director, and she'll actually be providing a half-day training for our principals at the Administrators Academy coming up, which they've also had opportunities to attend regional trainings at Fairmont earlier in the summer. I think the more training we get on this, the better right now. It's definitely a challenge. We'll incorporate this also. Some of our staff development sessions with secretaries and counselors, I'm sure, is going to incorporate aspects of Weavis 2.0. And then that will eventually also migrate down to our teaching staff. Right now, they're trying to see that, the classifications with higher levels of use and then kind of cycle down to lesser use within the
Is the
district.
financial system also being updated?
The financial system is still operating under the old, what I would call the green screen, the DOS-based program. They have not migrated that content. And the one application that I have to, for example, to approve grants and so forth, is still being housed in the older system. So from a financial standpoint, I do not anticipate that there's going to be significant changes in that for any. I mean, Katrina, from what you've received, is there anything on the near future on that front?
They actually attempted about 5 years ago, I want to say. They considered it, and it went down in a blaze of glory. I don't think they will.
I don't anticipate in the near future. I don't either.
And there's actually a lot of, they didn't anticipate some issues that they created for the finance department with this transition. So after that issue, they really won't want to pursue that.
I think they want to tackle this first before they even approach that one. So, one thing with Mrs. Durr, just to announce that students in Preston County will again have the opportunity to eat a no-cost breakfast and lunch at school through the Community Eligibility Provision, or CEP program. CEP was enacted as a result of Healthy and Hunger-Free Kids Act and provides universal meal services to children in high-poverty areas. Preston County has operated under this program for the last 4 years, and we'll be putting out media, and I believe I attached like a sample of the media release that will ultimately be pushed out using our Apogee program, using text, email, et cetera. Just want to give you an update at this time. The Hope Scholarship is still in limbo. The initial injunction enacted by Judge Tabbitt in Kanawha County. At this point, the update is the Attorney General has also filed a request for I don't want to word this, like a stay to a stay. But right now, that is in the intermediate court system, and no change has been made at this juncture. It's still, again, I've just tried to give you an example of an article in your packets as to the current status. It is challenging for us right now, in the fact I know Mrs. Schaefer and Mrs. Varner were trying to confer together to ascertain, we have to look at it from a standpoint of enrollment numbers. We're trying to determine how much staffing levels need to be in a given building, and our kindergarten numbers can be skewed by this. I mean, I think, for example, we had one district school that probably had 8 or 9 possible Hope Scholarship students that were prospective kindergarten students. Kindergarten, of course, has limitations for a certain number of kids, for example, that can be in a classroom, or a certain number of students before it would necessitate an aide. So it is making our job rather challenging to determine, whether or not to add staff, because our issue is if staff is added, that's not something we can pull back once that's occurred. So we're trying to be conservative in our staff adds, but this is certainly complicating matters as well. I did want to update the board on House Bill 4353. I did receive a response back from Mrs. Croyle with Bowles Rice. I actually shared the email correspondence that came from Kim. Right now, as it currently stands, our only option would be, for example, to run to renew our levy would be to run in November, which I'm not even certain. I will check with Mrs. Huggins as to our time standards, but quite frankly, I would be concerned in running in that timeline. I think that would be rushed, and I don't feel that it would probably be advisable to try to run in November versus May of 2024. Now, Bowles Rice does allude to, they do feel that there is a possibility of legislative relief on this, that, for example, there may be an adjustment to the July 2022 to a July 2023, which might possibly allow for election, some type of special election to be run for districts and scenarios like us. I will certainly have additional information by the next time we meet, but I just wanted to update you on that front as well. And there was actually, I would recommend too, in the email that was sent, there's a podcast there. It's about a 25-minute podcast that I listened to. It would be advisable. I mean, I think it would be kind of interesting to have a Bowles Rice lawyer, Trey Marone, which I think did some of your training at the Canaan Valley. He and all spoke with another legal representative on this matter. I think would be, if you have an opportunity, it would be advisable to take a listen. I did want to update the board. First day for employees back is going to be August 17th. We are still in process of finalizing our staff development activities. So, once we have those finalized, we'll certainly get that out so that our staff is, afforded dates, times, locations, and so forth, and the sessions will be available. All schools will begin the school year on a staggered start, which that's been, I would say this, I feel like that's been actually rather successful. I think, again, when you're talking, I know Jill and some of the others mentioned, the stress that sometimes is alluded that our instructors are under, that our kids are under. We feel like the staggered start is giving an opportunity to get kids off on a good foot, less kids in the building, more staff in order to be able to properly orient the kids to the procedures and things that they need to carry out in the building. I know, in the tone in speaking with our new teachers, that was a big thing that I emphasized is I know we feel like we need to jump in and start covering content as quickly as possible, but, the time spent in terms of trying to get your kids into proper procedures, I think that is time well spent, because if you really don't have those things built in, all the content knowledge in the world isn't going to help you because you don't have the kids ready to learn at this point. So, that if I were to recommend anything to a young teacher, that was one thing I did speak to them is it's really important to try to take that time at the onset of the year to work with your kids and be sure they are ready to carry out and do what the teachers are asking of them. So you can kind of see the grade levels and how that lays out. Our kindergarten and pre-K actually do not start until the following week on the 29th, and that's to afford the teachers and aid staff an opportunity to complete home visitations with the students. On the personnel side, and Angie, I'll turn the professional over to you, but on the service side, we have 2 mechanic positions. We have a candidate coming in for testing on Wednesday. I think it's Wednesday. Yeah, it's Wednesday. I've been talking with that gentleman. We have an aide position that was open, that became open as well through some of the shifting around. It's currently posted. We do have an automatic applicant for that position. We have 1 cook job that closes today with multiple applicants. So right now, with the exception, I'm a little concerned we'll get both mechanics positions filled, but right now, all of our bus operator positions are filled. My concern is we have very little depth on the sub because, as you'll see on today's agenda, we are hiring 3 directly from the subclass into full-time positions. So we're fulfilling jobs, but we're unfortunately we don't have a great deal of depth on that front. We'll continue to. We are starting a class in August. Mr. Plum indicates we have pretty good numbers of interest expressed, so we're going to continue to obviously combat that issue. At this point, I would say we do have scheduled service substitute classes scheduled this week. Tomorrow in this room, Mrs. Varner will be conducting. She and I touch base. I've done the aid class for a number of years, and she and I touch base. She's going to be teaching the aid class in conjunction with Chris Evans tomorrow. And we have a substitute cook and custodial class scheduled for Thursday. So we're hopeful that will get some additional applicants in the system as well on the service front. Angie, anything that you'd like to add on the professional side?
WVU has been working with us. We do have a CTR for English. They will have us some CTRs if I do have elementary ed positions open. If we cannot get them filled, we will fill them with CTRs for our elementary ed positions. And they're also going to be working with us for PE. So I will hopefully get our PE positions filled. So I think we'll be fine. You will see on your agenda when we get to it that I am asking for a couple new kindergarten positions. The reason I'm going to go and ask for those now is so if I do need to post them, once we get a better grip on these coach fellowships, I already have your permission, I can get them up. If I didn't ask for them now, we'd be waiting until August 8th, and I would just be running out of time to get them approved and posted. So I want to go and ask for your permission to get them approved now, so if I need to get them posted, I can get them up. Otherwise, math and special ed positions are still our areas that are where we're needing teachers the most. The high school math, I need 3. I need 3 special ed positions at the high school. Otherwise, they're just kind of spaced out, teachers spaced out here and there for where we need positions. But overall, we're not too bad compared to where we've been in past years.
And I would say this, that Mrs. Varner has been working in conjunction with Kristen and Autumn, also with the Finance Department, to try to, and as rapidly as possible, getting contracts issued out to our employees, and to get those mailed. I think that we're anticipating getting the large chunk of those mailed here in the next day or two. Yeah, so there's stuffing envelopes as we speak in there, I know. The other thing I'm just trying to think anything else at this time.
So, Ms. Varner, you're saying there are kindergarten positions that you're requesting today that we don't know if we have the numbers for, but you will only actually post them if we are exceeding room numbers. Is that correct?
Yes, so right now at Preston, one of them are for right now in Weavis, we're looking at 80. However, I also have 9 kids that are on Hope.
Right.
For at Preston. So I'm kind of watching to see where those kids are going to fall. So if they all would go and stay on Hope, that would drop my numbers down. I would possibly still need a kindergarten. So once the secretaries come back, they will be back starting on August the 3rd.
Some even earlier, but yes.
Yeah, some of them earlier. When they can come in and they can start adding any new students that they need to add in.
Or drop.
Dropping any students that I know that they've got requests for drop. So when they can add and drop all the kids, and I actually have a solid number, then I will know what I need to do. But I will have that number prior to the board meeting, the next board meeting. So I will be posting right around that time.
Makes sense.
And Mrs. Varner, one thing I'll ask is, I know I have a scheduled meeting in Charleston tomorrow, and I'm going to just make an inquiry to see, is there any issue with us, for example, reaching out? We have the contact information for the prospective Hope students. If that creates any issue for us to reach out to them and just ascertain their intent for the coming year, I haven't had the best dealings in terms of some. I want to make sure that the State Department's in line, that we're okay in reaching out to them. We're simply doing it just to try to assess our prospective numbers. But I'm going to make sure, if that's kosher, that we'll probably want to do that so we can get a better idea, a better handle on those numbers.
We have kids who are going to Trinity, we have Christian Covenant, we have homeschools. So we have a variety of Hope scholarship possibilities.
Yeah.
And one other thing I did want to add, Angie, I know we spoke at our staff meeting last week. We're going to get to a point where, as we feel that it is not likely that we're going to be unable to get a certified candidate prior to the start of the year, that we'll work in conjunction with some of our existing substitute personnel to potentially either get them inserted into the class as a long-term sub. Also looking at in situations where we may be able to use our and Brenda, correct me if I'm wrong, the Edmentum program, where, for example, there's more of a canned curriculum that could be used where a substitute personnel that maybe doesn't have a significant amount of curricular knowledge in a given topic could at least facilitate based upon provided curriculum. We want to make sure we know those situations as soon as possible so that we can get those staff members adequately trained to carry that out.
And then, Mr. Martin, on the school calendar, knowing that we don't have depth in the backup subs positions and things like that, like, did the school calendar, we already say canceled the week of deer season? Like, are we adjusting for those times when the times that you legitimately know that we most likely need subs, or are we waiting or like, what is the?
I can tell you in the efforts in the calendar development, I think those were thought process that were in place. And yeah, I think our calendar reflects our past experience in trying to develop a calendar where you avoid those situations as much as possible. Anymore, we just really don't have a tremendous amount of flexibility in this calendar. You have to have a certain number of days. There are certain things that are required. So it's really, there's just really a few areas where you can even look at doing much in terms of development overall.
Thank you.
Ms. Varner, I know we're doing all kind of different little things to acquire teachers. Is there anything in the legislation right now that we can offer bonuses to bring math teachers in?
I mean, we could do, like, if we would, as a state, providing a bonus.
A county level. It was county. We were at a meeting where some counties were offering money to attract teachers. We didn't get the whole particulars on it, but I know we're bumping up grade levels like math teachers get bumped up 3 years on their salaries, right?
Yeah, we currently do that. Our math and our special ed teachers get the 3-year bump if they are fully certified and they teach at least 60% of their day is in a math or a special ed classroom. They get a 3-year bump,
Okay, so there's no monetary bonus to,
like a sign-on bonus or
right.
something. No,
Okay.
we currently do not offer that.
Okay, anything else at this time?
Yeah, I got a couple questions.
Sure, Mr. Seager.
The insurance money for the flood at Kingwood Elementary, have we received that yet? And are the bookshelves that were damaged covered under that?
Honestly, Mr. Ziegler, I'm not sure, but I can certainly work
All
to
right.
get that answer to you today.
Thank
I'm
you.
not sure of the status. So you want to know in regards to his insurance funding been received?
Right,
And were the shelving units inclusive in any insurance settlement?
right.
I can work to find that out for you.
Okay, I got one other one. This conference we were at a couple weeks ago, we found out that the board is going to be assessed on certain things. So, do we have any low-performing schools right now? that are
We have
identified?
no designated low-performing schools at this time. Okay. Anything else? Okay, Mr. Huggins.
Okay, moving on, thank you. Moving on, we will go to service personnel. We'll entertain a motion to approve the service personnel agenda for 7/25/22.
I make that motion.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Call for the vote.
Okay, voting is open. Okay, motion passes 5-0.
Moving on, professional personnel.
I'll make a motion that we go into executive session for personnel and legal issues.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to go into executive session for personnel.
Can we take a voice vote on that?
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure how to fix that.
That's what we do. Okay, we'll do voice vote. Mr. Kisner?
Yes.
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 Okay, that's at 11:49, going to executive session.
I'm after that.
I was going to say my dear too.
Yeah.
I'm going to pause the
Yes.
proceedings here, and then we need to do a couple things with the mics.
at any time. We're supposed to. Yeah. Mhm.
You left it on your desk.
I have several. Here's a couple. Pick one. I try to leave one every time here. I'm froze to death now.
Let's just start. Hold on. Still on here. Okay, and it is 12:18.
Call us back in.
Let's try this.
Okay, it's 12:18. We're coming back from executive session. I'll take a motion to return.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second. Any discussion? Call for the vote. Mr. Kisner?
Yes.
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 Okay, we're returning to session at 12:18.
No action was taken on the issue from executive session. Moving on, professional personnel. Entertain a motion to approve the personnel listing.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? I'm sorry, it was properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Okay, voting is open. Motion passes 5-0.
Moving on for the coach extracurricular personnel. Need a motion to approve the recommendation for the coaching and extracurricular agenda for 7/25/22.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Call for the vote.
Okay, voting is open. Motion passes, 4 yes, 1 abstention. Mr. Kisner.
Moving on, recommend the board approve the memorandum of understanding in regard to the child nutrition program between Preston County Schools and the West Virginia Department of Education.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
The document provided is signed and dated on 6/6. There have been by the previous superintendent. I think there's been 3 meetings since. Why are we approving this now?
Mr. Kisner, I just thought it was a good recourse for this to be included at this point. I apologize for the fact it wasn't included on the first one in July. But when Mrs. Durr and I discussed, I don't know if in the past that this has been formally approved by the board or not, but we just felt it prudent to get it on the board for your all's approval.
It was signed on 6/6, which is 2 months after it was brought to us by the state superintendent. Was there something that for 2 months was in deliberation or consideration?
No, I just think that this was something, I don't know that it had been traditionally placed before the board for formal approval
Well, I
in
meant
years
to the,
past.
I'm sorry to interrupt, by the previous superintendent who didn't sign it for a month and a half afterwards. Just was there something that was in a holdup or anything, or?
I could not speak to that, Mr. Kisner, I don't know.
All right, thank you.
Any other discussion? Call for the vote.
Okay, voting is open. Motion passes 5-0.
Next is going to be discussion of the possible adoption of small board Robert's Rules of Order. And that's Mr. Martin.
Mr. Huggins, this was an item I was asked to place on there. I actually, Mrs. Varner and I had a meeting with Dr. William Rozier, who is our policy expert here for the school board. And he indicated that based upon when I had initially spoke with Dr. Rozier in regards to the board's seeking some information on this topic, reached out to Howard O'Cool with the State Board of Education Association. And what he indicated is that right now, Mr. O'Cool recommended to Dr. Rozier to not necessarily move at this juncture with any significant policy changes, because he did anticipate some significant guidance that would be forthcoming from the state board. So, I can see if we can get Mr. O'Cool to reiterate that, but from what Dr. Rozier said in his dialogue with him, that he did anticipate, again, some significant guidance from the state board in regards to this specific topic. So at this time, I'm not sure that procedurally if this is, I don't know that it's necessarily an item that can be tabled, but I can continue to place this on the agenda for potential discussion as information becomes available, if that's the will of the board.
One of the things when Mr. Ziegler and I actually attended the president's training, one of the things that Trey, what was his last name? Marone actually talked about from Bowles and Rice was actually the small boards is already inside Robert's rules. So he said, somebody else had asked the same type of question, basically said, you didn't have to do anything because it's already there. So if the school board association's going to give us direction, I'd say we just leave it there, and then when they send the direction, we take a look at it. As long as everybody's in agreement. Okay, because this wasn't one for a motion.
No, this was simply for discussion today.
Everybody, can you see Mr. Tatum, you get that? Okay. I couldn't see your head.
Sorry, I'll sit back. My big head.
No. Okay. Any other discussion there? We good? Okay, moving on. Monthly financial report. This is also just for information, right? Or is this approval? Is this an approval? I couldn't tell.
Oh, shoot, I should have had this as an action item. If we could take a voice vote on this, and I'll get
Okay.
this corrected in the minutes.
So then,
My apologies.
At this, okay, I just wasn't sure. At this time, I'll take a motion to accept the monthly financial report from May.
I'll make that motion.
Yes. That is something that's not typically voted on. I apologize. I'm sorry. I apologize.
That's okay. We're all.
I thought I had just made a mistake in the setup, which could very easily happen.
We're all learning this first few meetings, as long as nobody gets rid of it.
So that's strictly informational nature, and I apologize.
I do have a question about the report, if I may.
Yes.
On page 3, the capital projects fund is currently showing 55,000% revenues received. If you look at that column as a whole in the total revenues, it is at 75% total revenues received, which means it's obviously not taking that 55,000 into consideration for its calculation of the overall. How is it completely ignored? Is it added in as 100%? What is the program doing in those cases?
That's not my program. That is the state's website pull down.
Okay.
I can't, and first of all, some of that stuff's a little skewed on the agenda before because of the budget hadn't been done at that point, transfers for the end of the year. I can't really attest to how that program runs.
Okay. So this report is not from our system per se. It is data that is accumulated by the state from our WEVIS that then they are generating, and we don't have any. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Just quick comment. At least I could read this one to figure it out. It made sense from, I'm not being mean, but it's been hard, and I'm anxious for the training that you're going to do later on, because that's been the hard part for me is the finance. And this, I thought, at least it made sense to me. I could look at it and figure out. So that was a positive thing for me. Okay, the financial analysis.
And this is informational in nature.
Okay, any discussion on this? I'm glad you're here, though, because that helps. Anything on the financial analysis? Okay, moving on. Schedule of checks. This one. Okay, we'll take a motion to accept or to approve the schedule of checks.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the schedule of checks. Any discussion?
On page 11 of one register, there's $84,000, or $8,400, not $84,000, $8,400 to Disney Resorts. I assume that that has to do with the conference that the model schools, is that correct? On page 7 of the 725 checks register, executive 23 PDF, there's a $1,700 for magic shows during the summer school. Can anyone elaborate?
I'm not seeing 11 pages.
Yeah, I believe that there were associated incentives and so forth with summer school. For example, I know they had a large-scale event at the elementary school that included, I think they had a petting zoo, they had inflatables, but it was a tied-in incentive with the summer school program. And I'm not certain of the magic show or not. Mrs. Hooten, I don't know, you probably saw some of this.
It looked like multiples. I think there was 4 of them for $425 apiece.
Yeah, I think Terra was one. That was just one on the top of my head. Mr. Kisner, I can have to find out in terms of locations and so forth.
I'm not going to speak to the
I'm
money.
sorry, did you?
I won't speak to the money value, but I will say my son attended the summer school program, and he came home that evening and talked a lot about the magic show and how he learned a lot of different stuff in it. So in general, he really enjoyed that part of the program.
All right, thank you. The last question I have is, and I apologize, are we required to be part of the West Virginia SBA? Or is that a voluntary thing that we participate in?
We are a part of the West Virginia School Board Association. We are not a part of the National School Board. West Virginia is not a part of it.
Right, but I'm saying, is our county required to be a member of that, or is there some perk that we receive? Because it looked like we have about $5,000 of dues to them. So I was wondering, like, I'd asked actually at our training, like, if they would say, hey, here's what we are and what we do, and here's why you want us. And that was actually one of the questions they did not address during their Q&A. So I was just curious if we know what we're provided for those dues.
Mr. Kisner, I don't know if it is a formal requirement. I can certainly find out in terms of if it's a formal requirement and then ask for them to just list off the assorted benefits.
Just some idea of what we're, I mean, I'm not saying they don't benefit us. I don't know enough to know what I don't know, so.
Understood.
Yeah, I don't know if they ever said it was required, but every county's in it.
Yeah.
So I would kind of assume, but you can't assume.
Well, you'll find that 95% of CPAs are part of the West Virginia Board of CPAs or AICPA, and none of them are required to be, I'm saying, like, there's a lot of things that we do professionally, and I just was curious if it's just the offerings of the conference and the training. And again, that was useful, what we went to, but I just want to know what we were.
Yeah, I don't know.
Thank you.
I'll see what I'll certainly see what I can find out to that front as well.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so it's any other discussion? Call for the vote.
Voting's open. Okay, motion passes 5-0.
Okay, next item is the budget journals, entries 101 through 103 out of child nutrition, AP test fees, and early literacy. Need a motion to recommend the approved budget journals, 101 through 103.
I'll make that motion.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the budget journal entries, 101 through 103? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Voting's open. Motion passes 5-0.
Next item will be the tear out East Preston Aurora paving project. Need a motion to recommend the board to accept a successful bid of $439,080 by Anderson Excavating for the targeted paving at tear out East Preston and Aurora schools.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Voting is open. Okay, motion passes 5-0. Mr. Huggins, I did get a message from Mrs. Berry. She had sent in that said the magic show was actually was for Wednesday summer reading programs at each school participating in summer school this year.
Okay, thank you. Next is curriculum update, secondary curriculum update. So I'm assuming, Ms. Layton, that's you. Is that an assumption wrong?
Yes, that's correct.
Created a document that Mr. Martin asked me to put together, just going over some of the questions that, just sort of an overall picture of what's happening secondary curriculum-wise. I know we have a date set up to do a work session in August, so we'll probably go into detail with anything you all need on that day, but if there are any questions about what we submitted, I'm happy to take those.
I got a couple questions, Ms.
Sure.
Layton. What date is that we're having the update?
The 8th, I
August
believe?
8th
August 8th.
at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, Mr. Zig, we're scheduling that in advance of our next, so we'll have a publicly announced work session from 4 to 6 p.m. in advance of our next board meeting.
Okay, now, at the last meeting we were at, they were alluding something to the board is going to be assessed for academic performance by the assessment office. And I was wondering if you heard anything about that. We're going to be, the board is going to be graded as to us having sometime in our meetings information on student achievement or student performance, not just showing kids, hey, following kids got awards.
Right.
So did they?
You want to see data.
Right. Did they?
It has to be once a month. It has to be on our agenda.
We haven't talked a lot about that yet. Some of our curriculum and instruction meetings are still up and coming for the summer, so I would say it's definitely going to come up, but we have not been given a lot of information about that yet.
It's, well, unfortunately, it was one in the past. And what happens is, what Mr. Ziegler is in reference to, each board meeting, at one board meeting a month, correct? Mr. Ziegler?
I thought.
That's what I have in my notes. We have to have curriculum content on the board agenda.
Okay.
And then if it doesn't, that's through the assessment office. They have started. It'll come out one of two things. They weren't sure if it was going to be September, October, or if it was going to be December, January. You guys will get that. And
Okay.
then we as a board, that's one of the things that it's supposed to be on the agenda, then you guys will be as well.
Well, I mean, I'm happy to do whatever you need me to do, and I know Mr. Martin and Ms. Berry and I and some others have planned to do our quarterly data talks that that Mr. Watering had started last year. And so we will have a lot of data that we can share with you. So we'll be happy to do that.
Yeah, I would say that in addition, at this point, we would also obviously want to discuss our standardized testing reporting, but at this time it's embargoed and we cannot release any information to that front. But, I mean, there'll be a significant amount of data that will be available to us in the early portions of the year. In the interim, though, I know there were items that wanted to be discussed, and Mr. Tatham had asked for updates as it pertained to secondary and elementary curriculum. Also, there have been discussions about the grading scale processes, which would certainly both be topics at our next scheduled work session.
But that just also needs, at least like this one, I think we'd be okay, because you're going to explain what we're going to do. Okay, but then at least on the agenda, we need it so that it's on the agenda and in the
Well,
minutes.
we're good. We're 2 for 2 thus far, Mr.
Yeah.
Huggins, because we're good for July with today, and it will
Yeah.
be appear in regards to
Right.
materials will certainly be afforded to you for the work meeting scheduled on the 8th. So,
But yeah, I'll stay on top of that, whatever you need me to.
Okay, and could we get like the balanced scorecard for the schools?
We will. It hasn't come out yet.
Okay.
That's
We
what
can't
Mr.
release it
Martin was
yet.
saying. It's still embargoed, so as soon as it's out, we'll definitely have a lot to cover on that meeting.
Right, because the last one they gave us was previous, and,
Yeah, we didn't have the data from COVID, and then there was so it has not been released yet.
okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I just have a quick question about the chart that you gave us, the schematic. For math, there's no textbook listed. Is there textbooks for 6th and 8th and 9th through 12th grade math?
They're the HMH,
Pardon?
is that not on their HMH? Is that
It says
company?
6 math, 6, 8. Oh, yeah, it says curriculum, HMH.
Yes,
What
that's
is
their
that?
curriculum.
What does that
Houghton
mean?
Mifflin Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, yes, that's the title of the company of the textbook that we use.
Okay, because under ELA and under social studies, it will say, it says textbooks, but for math, it just says digital and printable assessments,
Right.
supporting resources, videos, read aloud support.
That was what we adopted in the last math adoption, which was 5 years ago, I believe. They adopted digital materials, because at that time, there were a lot of physical textbooks in the classrooms, and say Algebra 1, they had maybe 2 to 3 previous sets of Algebra 1 books, and so they only purchased the digital materials because they had the physical books from older adoptions. We're coming up to a math adoption next year, so I'm sure things have changed a lot since then, and how we choose materials next time may be completely different, so, but that was what we adopted.
So does that mean for this year that there is no textbooks?
We adopt on a 6-year cycle. So what we adopt, what is in existence now is what was picked 5 years ago, and there are physical textbooks that are older editions, but our official adopted curriculum is the digital version of the HMH curriculum.
So I'm gonna ask a third time just to understand. So
Okay.
is there a textbook, a printed textbook that can be taken home to be used
There are
for
physical
this
textbooks.
class, this school year?
There are physical textbooks in the classrooms that students may use. They were not part of our last adoption. They're from older adoptions, but there are physical books located in the schools.
Would it be fair to say that there are textbooks available as a resource?
Yes.
But there is not a textbook that is the
Part of our last
set
adoption.
textbook for the
Yes.
curriculum that we are currently teaching?
Yes, that would be correct.
Okay, yeah, so for the work session, then I want to talk about how we can make something for this year so that there can be a textbook that can be used by the student at home that parents can be involved with.
We can talk about that. The math textbook is a very, very big expense. Math and ELA are our 2 biggest ones, so we'll want to look at what our plans are kind of on a long-term basis too, because when we coming into a new adoption, we're going to have to adopt something new next year as well. So we'll see what we can
Okay.
come up with that meets both.
I understand
of
that,
those.
but like when we had the 5 people here that went to the Model Schools Conference, every single one of them talked about books and how grateful they were to be able to get
They're-
a hold
yes,
of a
they're
book
professional
and how
resources.
to have a stress-free or low-stress environment makes it better to educate. And currently with math, at the middle school level, I think that's a pivotal age range to get kids excited that they can handle math, and not having a printed textbook, a tangible textbook that they can take home is a very stressful situation
A
for
lot
parents.
of their materials can go home. They go home with their one-to-one devices. So the materials are accessible on the devices which they have. So we'll get into
Yeah,
the weeds
but I'm
of
saying,
that
but
and see
that,
like what's the best.
but that device is very difficult for parents to use to teach and understand math. Very. And so also, part of this work session, can we have like see a sample of these textbooks, or like say for math, for sixth grade math, can you show us the digital, so you can like just give a 5-minute and say, here's how you learn math on a computer screen for a 6th, 7th, and 8th grader?
We can do that, yeah.
Okay.
Is the digital generally in the form of software, an app, or a website, or?
It's both. It comes in, it is interactive pieces. There is an actual textbook. It's just a digital textbook. And then the teachers have resources as well. And those come in the form of everything from assessments to worksheets to guided activities. So there's multiple pieces to that.
But like the students' access, is it like a, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I'm
No,
saying
it's
like,
okay.
is it generally like a CD, DVD,
No,
or is it
it's
a website?
It's a website or an app on their laptop.
Okay,
It's on their device that they have. So they have it like already preloaded.
okay.
Mrs. Layton, I know that a lot of the companies have moved away. At one point in time, and there were a lot of PDFs, like, for example, where
There
the textbook
were.
was available on a PDF. That's really a process that a lot of the textbook vendors have moved away from. I would anticipate, I don't know, because it was too readily
Too easy to
shared.
copy, yeah.
A lot of copyright infringement, I'm sure, probably has happened
But the
along the
apps
way.
have some offline features too. It's not all a requirement that you're on the internet to use
Right.
the activities. And the majority of these things are practices done in the classroom, so. But I'll get as much as I can get gathered, and when we do our work session, we'll talk down through that and see what we need.
Yeah, I would, I mean, again, just, our questions, or my questions at least, are more just for what I need to think about for that. But the difference between an app and a website, to me, is huge. A website is available on a device that somebody's familiar with, already owns. If they have access to that through a website, that's huge. Whereas if it's an app, apps are a plague. I'm from the technology world, and apps are nothing but a way to get your teeth in and sink them in, and it becomes very proprietary, and it's generally never a good user experience from my perspective. So I am curious if you can, just as a heads up for that work session, I am interested in knowing the difference between a website that is available and meant to be, is readily available at any point in time for somebody versus an app that is proprietary to a single machine or again, someone's phone who will fill up every, one app fills a phone hard drive up on when you're buying low budget phones, as opposed to having 14 apps where you have to have one so that the school can tell you what's going on and one so that your youth league can tell you what's going on and anyways, all that's all to the side. But when somebody has printable, it says digital and printable. For instance, in the math section, like you said, do teachers are they given enough copy paper that they could essentially print the entirety of it? Or do we get, I'm sure that
They wouldn't print out a whole book cover to cover, but they
Okay.
would print the lessons as they're needed.
Right, okay.
As it applied to
Okay,
each.
do we have a set rule on percentage of paper that they get to the percentage of the book that they're not getting in print? Is there a model or
I would speak to that, Mr. Kisner, in regards to schools typically each have a certain copying allocation based in line with the copier that they have, a certain number of copies. When they hit a certain level or threshold, they get into overage amounts. The vast majority of our schools, I would say, have established, some type of copy limitations. Really, while I understand the need for tangible materials, we also, with so much of this being provided in a digital format, and with all students being afforded an opportunity with devices, it's with that in line that we're hopeful that we can, limit the amount of copies that would be necessary. But
And we need them to also understand the technology tools because they're tested on technology. So when they go to take their math is a manipulative digital test. It's not a paper-based test. So they have to know how to answer the questions by manipulating things, using a mouse, using the computer, or they don't do well on the test. So it's a mix of both. We have to kind of marry the two together to make parents able to help their students, but at the same time, make the kids ready for what we're asking them to do.
Yeah, I guess that's what my question was. I knew that teachers are allocated a certain number of copies, correct? If the math department said, hey, we would like to go to digital with printable options? Are they given extra allocation because that is the curriculum they're using is what
Also,
I'm.
yeah, also, schools are afforded a certain amount of levy allocation related to instructional materials that, that's given to them on a prorated basis based upon student enrollment at a given school. So that, again, would be more of a school-based decision on how much of that funding they would want to devote, for example, to paper expenses, for example. But paper would certainly be, Katrina, I would be correct now, that paper would be, for example, an expense that would be something that would be within that levy call. That could be an aspect of that if they chose to
Right,
use it.
but
for
we're
that.
not giving any special allocation if a teacher is got a digital textbook. That's ultimately all I was trying to figure out, is if we're.
Are you
if-
speaking specifically of math? Like, I
With
don't
any
look and
subject,
say-
if they have a digital curriculum where they don't have a printed book, are they given extra, are they specific, are there instances at least, or that we know of, where they're specifically given extra allocation of printing paper because they have a digital
It's not
book?
allocated that
Okay.
way. I have allocated, like when I was in the administrative position in the school, I have allocated teachers that had specific needs, different allocations, so I'm sure the
Yeah.
principals are still able to do that. And anytime anybody has asked me for anything, we get it. Like, they have what they need, it's just a matter of, whether or not they've asked for it, really.
Okay,
So,
that's fine.
yeah.
I just was curious if we did anything of that nature, so.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, before we go on, just so we can make sure that we have it in the minutes, the work session, doesn't really, is August 8th from 4 to 6, and then our board meeting will start at 6.
That's correct.
And that way, it's there. We
And
have to
that'll
do-
be when the meeting agenda is put out, that'll be announced as well.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Martin, you had passed on that at that work session that I was interested in knowing what hardware each grade level, because I'm assuming it's done by grade level to some extent, but what hardware each grade level is required to take home on a daily basis? I.e., if their only math textbook is an app on an iPad, they are required to take home an iPad in their backpack or whatever to home every night. So trying to figure out what kind of burden we are putting hardware-wise on each student that they're carrying around is what did that make sense?
I understand what you're saying the hardware they require is if they're K2, they'd bring an iPad, and if they're 3 through 12, they would bring a laptop. I guess what you're is asking, though, is in relation to the curriculum, would they necessarily be required to bring that home nightly?
Right. I'm saying, what hardware are we requiring? I mean, are we requiring a kindergartner to carry a $500 iPad to and from school every day? That is what I'm interested in, is what kind of liability are we putting on parents in a poverty county in hardware that may or may not be based on a curriculum restriction or what?
Well, I know with the iPads and Mrs. Moyers, I was going to say that well, that's what I was going to say with the plan that we have. I don't know that we've had any parent that's been affording any out-of-pocket cost for iPad replacement.
No, not what are they paying, but what's their liability? I know of parents that had to pay to replace iPads. If the iPad gets broken and the parents,
With the iPads, no. We actually had the replacement plan.
They send the iPad to me, I send it off, and it gets fixed,
Yeah.
and in the meantime, that student has an iPad back that day or the very next day. There's no cost at all to the parent.
so a student comes in and says, I lost my iPad, it's completely gone. There's no questions asked, they get a new iPad.
Well, if it's lost, we've never had an iPad that's been lost. In the I'm going on my third year. I have had an iPad that fell off the top of a car and I ran over.
Okay.
Remember that one?
And that didn't cost the parent anything?
Nope.
Okay.
And as far as taking them home, we had the iPads in place we purchased iPads right at the turn of virtual when we went, for COVID. So the students did take these devices home nightly because we never knew at one point if we were going virtual or if we were coming to school the next day.
Right.
So students take an iPad home nightly in their book bag.
Yeah, that's what I was understanding. You're saying, though, that and again, that's why I'm asking questions, but there is currently no liability on a parent if something is broke or lost.
What we ask the parents to do is with the charger, because, currently I think the chargers are $12.75, I think.
Yeah.
But if a charger is lost, because we issue them a charger, if a charger is lost or they can't find one or it gets busted or something, we ask that they pay for
And Mrs. Moyers too, the general recommendations for the child to leave the charger at home anyway, so that it's not traveling back and forth.
Yeah, the devices are to be charged nightly, and the chargers stay at home at all times. Chargers don't stay at school.
Now, Mr. Kisner, and I think that was part of the reasoning behind when the iPads were purchased at the grade level span. Understand these were much younger children who were trying to transport devices back and forth, so to have the Apple plan in place for replacement of those devices. Older students do have a certain level of responsibility for breakage and damage. We do not currently insure the devices 3 through 12. So there is potential financial liability for students in those age ranges.
Third grade through 12?
Yes.
So third graders are going home with technology that they're liable for, but K through 2 is covered.
And I would say that in this instance, it is accompanied by, within the acceptable use policies and initial paperwork, they are indicating as such that they are taking on that responsibility, yes.
Does a parent have an opportunity to have an education by not taking that on? Can they reject taking, I mean, I don't have a third grader, I have a third grader in my house. I would not put an iPad on his backpack on the bus. And I'm not saying he's a bad kid. I wouldn't do it. I would not pay for an iPad to put in the backpack of a third grader on a bus.
Well, the circumstance you run into is, again, with the advents of a lot of our digital curriculum, we have worked with parents where they have kept the device at home, but it does, if they afford certain technology at home that they can still keep up with whatever stated work that's needed from a digital standpoint, we've worked through those situations on a case-by-case basis.
All right, so there are options for the parents to opt out.
We've had to work with parents in some situations, yes.
Okay, all right. That's just what I was getting at, is what kind of liability are we doing as a system to our kids? I mean, textbooks were not cheap, and I understand. Right.
Well, I was going to say, in terms of the total fiscal responsibility, there's not a huge discernible difference.
Completely agree.
Our most common repair in terms of laptops would be the screen replacements, which are $35, which would be far less than for example, replace a lost or damaged textbook. The device total, I'm trying to think, they've increased. You're probably, with the current Dell models, upward 300.
Yeah.
Which is more expensive than a textbook, but, I mean, I think those are comparable costs when all things
No, I agree
considered.
with that. Textbooks would be more expensive. If you had 5 textbooks, you'd be more expensive than an iPad. But if you drop a backpack with 5 textbooks, you're not out anything. You drop a backpack with an iPad, and you're probably replacing a screen, like, depending upon how it drops.
Yeah, that's what the parents are for now, but again, that's not necessarily district-sponsored. But it is accompanied by an option to buy a low-cost insurance policy for situations that go above and beyond. Accidental things are inclusive in that. We found the district could have considered that, but we felt it was going to be cost prohibitive for the number of devices we were having to put out. But again, parents do have the opportunity, if they feel as if that's something they want to pursue. I believe the policy on that is generally somewhere between $40 and $50 for a one-year term plan that covers our laptop devices.
Okay.
Typically, we have not really pushed that at the K2 level because of the plan that we have for replacement.
So I assume that means every 3 years we replace them?
We're on a cycle where we're able to reincorporate, of course, like, for example, last year's second graders no longer need those devices. I mean, but typically with the iPads, we're replacing at one or two grade levels, depending upon the age of the device.
Yeah, I was just saying, with the 3 year, if the insurance was 3 years, I assume that was our current replacement iteration was close to that period.
When we first purchased them, we had to
Right.
purchase it 3, so the county could not afford to purchase 3 grade levels at a time. So
Right.
once we get through this first recycle, then we're going to recycle the kindergarten, or the second grade, we'll recycle those, and then we'll be on a contract per grade level, and then that way we won't have a burden of trying to purchase.
Bite it off all at one time.
iPads versus,
Yeah.
1,000 each, so we're going to cycle through so that it's not a burden on the county.
Yeah, no, makes sense. Thank you very much.
And I can't wait until school starts so you guys can actually get out into the school system and see these classrooms in action and just see what we do. I think you're missing a huge piece of what curriculum and what we do in the schools, because it's hard to understand sitting up here not being able to have had a chance for you and Lucas to be in the schools and actually, I mean, I know, Lucas, you've got, your kids, but I think, it's going to be awesome when you can walk in a classroom
Well, no, and I do appreciate that, and I look forward to that. I guess right now, my current view is listening to my wife every night with the applications and with the programs during the pandemic and with the experience, and she's an educator, or was before she stayed home. So that's where I think our perspective comes from as parents who have seen what the technology has been that's been being sent home and seen how it was used and seeing the experience from our kids trying to learn on it without a teacher in the room, which is definitely different than with a teacher in the room, but with trying to get an education from that kind of a system through when they were first distributed. And so again, our experience is certainly one, or at least mine, I should not speak for Mr. Tatham, but my experience is certainly only one-sided from that I haven't seen in the classroom, so I do agree.
And I'd like to comment too, Darla, I appreciate it. And I would like, if we can go ahead and schedule those times where we as a board can go together to visit classrooms to see how it's done, that would be helpful. The second comment would be, I think you made a comment of saying that kids no longer need worksheets to write down doing the math.
There's a time for it and a time, I mean, there's a time for it and a time not, right?
Mhm.
Because they need to learn to write their name.
Yeah, I understand.
There's a divide,
And I think as a school system, we have an obligation to teach kids how to use a pencil to write on paper. But what I'm getting at is I would gather that or speculate that probably 75% of the school population currently cannot write in cursive in Preston County. Cannot. And it's sad. And frankly, we're not doing ourselves any service with that. And then my third comment would be similar to what Cross said, is I encourage, and we could talk about this at a future point, but I think we should send out a survey to faculty, teachers, and to parents and ask if they would like it to be a solely digital curriculum or a hybrid or having more printable resources, because there needs to be more printable resources that parents and students can interact with at home.
Well, that will come back to where, when we purchase our curriculum, the world's changing.
I understand that, but every single teacher that went to this Model Schools Conference commented on the books that they were able to purchase and read. Every single one of them. So if we're doing it for pleasure, at a minimum, we should be doing it for instruction.
Ms. Layton, am I correct that the teacher, the subject, each subject, those teachers have input about whether or not they want to go to digital or books? Is that correct? I mean, so the teachers are being, I'm not saying the parents are not being, but I think that the teachers are being, on that 6-year rotation that you have for the curriculum, they get polled regarding whether they want to go to digital or paper, I believe.
It's not even just a poll, they are the people that choose it.
Yeah.
We don't choose it, the teachers do. So when we go through a textbook adoption, and we do this every year, it's on a 6-year cycle, each year's a different content area. Last year was a big one, last year was ELA. So then we open it up at the beginning, we have cohort meetings with those ELA teachers, and we ask who wants to be on, kind of the selection committee. I've never turned anyone away. We talk to the curriculum teams at each school, we talk to administrators, we send people to the caravans, we do digital caravans, and we peruse all the materials. When it comes to the purchasing, then we look at budget-wise what we can afford from this end and what each of those companies offer. Some of them offer only digital, some of them offer what we call consumable books that are like the textbook in like a workbook format almost. The kids can write in, they get a new one each year. And that's what we did with ELA. I'm sorry, ELA was 2 years ago. Last year was science. I'm getting ahead of myself. In science, we did it, I can only speak to secondary, but we did it a little differently because a lot of our science teachers have a lot of curriculum, but really need lab supplies. So what I did for them is we chose together the company that we wanted to adopt. And we went with, I said, we have to choose a unified company. But then I let each teacher choose if they needed the digital resources for their students, if they needed a tangible resource, or if they needed just the teacher's manual, say, and lab supply money. And so that's kind of the way we approached it. So, and I did something different for every teacher. So each year, it evolves as we evolve, but we do base those purchases on teacher needs in the classroom. So.
The other thing with the science part, Ms. Layton had presented in another board meeting, they also kept budgets so that, for example, Mr. Zigray retires, I move into his position. Do I have the ability to get what I want versus what he had?
Yes.
And that was.
They're giving, the allotments are only
Because I thought that was an important question as we're looking, so that some teacher.
Very wise.
You know, I I'm not as computer literate as Mr. Zigray, so he has all this stuff, but that's why. Any other discussion? I didn't hear.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's something, that was one of the things that, at the training we went to, one of the things they talked about was board members going out. We just can't go as a group. Two of us can go. And several counties that we were there, they go, their board members are in every school. So it may be something when we do the work session, we look down and break up so that we're all going to different schools. And that if Darla's going to be the coordinator, well, you said you would. I thought I heard you say that you would. I mean, I didn't hear that. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Maintenance process and procedures. Mr. Murray.
Mr. Martin asked me to come here and speak on how our work order system works. So I'll give you a brief description, and I'll take any questions here at the end. Good morning, I'm Matt Murray. I'm in charge of the buildings and grounds for Preston County Schools. Preston County Schools has an electronic work order system in place. The process for the system works as follows. All school staff are to go to their administrators at their school, report the issues, and their administrators will put the work order online. Once it is received, it is put in an order of priority with all safety issues taken care of first. Each county vehicle is equipped with an iPad so they can assess the work orders daily and make sure everything is taken care of in a timely manner. An entry of what was done and the date of completion is entered by them. This school year, they will be checking in with the secretaries when entering the school and will be giving them a receipt of what they did and what must be ordered.
And Mr. Murray, if you don't mind if I just interject quickly, and a lot of that is attributed to, one thing is that we just want to afford principals the opportunity to just get an update. We don't want a certain level of frustration to exist because they're not certain of a status of a work order. So that was one thing that we're trying to react to that, is to certainly try to stay communicative. Because there may be a situation, for example, where a certain part is not available. In that instance, this receipting process can kind of update the school staff as to, we haven't forgotten about you, it's just right now, we're looking at a delay until we can get this addressed.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I
Matthew.
think that was an issue in the past. Sometimes we were getting 2 and 3 work orders just because the administrator didn't know exactly we're waiting on parts. But the guys and myself, we're in touch numerous times a day. We also have a state SBA preventative maintenance program that a lot of you probably don't know about. Ms. Hooten works really hard on this system. All of our SBA money, if we've been given any SBA money on a school system, we have to have it inspected every year, any money given out by the state. But they also have this program called School Due, and all HVAC systems in these new buildings spits out a work order. It comes to Ms. Hooten. She gives it to me. I address the guys as when it's done, but then she has to individually address each and every one of them in written comment that goes back to them. So our work order system we have in place is actually a little better than what the state has. But in addition to that, we have, I can't even tell you how many phone calls I probably got back there waiting on me today. There is several emergencies every day. A lot of these items don't get listed as work done by the guys. In addition to that, we got all of our reports, the fire marshal report, the BRIM report, the health department reports, SBA inspections, elevator inspections, safety inspections, playgrounds, and bleachers. Just some of the work that we're working on this summer, Aurora, new gym floor, paving, a new water line, Brewston, gym floors, AC upgrades, Central, gym floor, ceiling, striping, new lines in the parking lot, Kingwood Elementary, ceiling and striping, new lines in the parking lot. Preston High is getting gym floors, restrooms. They're getting a new roof on the JROTC building. Roseburg's getting some ceiling and striping on the parking lot. South Preston's getting gym floors, ceiling, striping, new lines, parking lot, tear out a gym floor. They're also getting a paving project. West Preston is getting a new roof on the older section out there. Gym floors, ceiling and striping. There is painting, floor cleaning, stripping, waxing, HVAC control, too numerous to list, going on at all locations. We're currently working on some of the restrooms at Preston High, and we've been been dealing with Mr. Martin, working with him, trying to address, and Mr. Benninger, some of our doors in the county are problematic to a lot of wear, tear. We're having issues getting a lot of parts for those right now, but we are working to address those. Just to give you a little perspective, Preston County has 9 maintenance workers, and I just got all this information out of our CEFP book. We have 463,000 square feet of buildings. We have a total of 124 acres. So when you put that in perspective, each guy is taking care of everything on 89,051 square feet and approximately 13.7 acres each. So that's quite a bit of area, quite a bit of ground to cover every day. I'll take any questions anyone has.
Is there a particular reason why teachers cannot put in the work order and be approved by school administrators as opposed to an administrator having to spend time entering it and being the only person with access?
Yes, we've had several issues with that. And what was happening is a lot of them was turning in work orders, and it was actually stuff that their custodial staff could have been taken care of, and it just kept filling the page up. Therefore, the administrator has the ability to say, hey, we're not putting in a work order, that's something you can do. So
And
it
Mr.
just
Murray,
kinda
the
cleans it
administrator
up.
could designate that to another
He can
personnel
designate-
member in the
we have
building.
certain secretaries that do it, but it's very few. It's usually the administrator.
One quick thing, Mr. Murray. Since you're doing it by computer, is there a chance we could get, as an example, and I think the public has no concept, including our staff, how much work is actually being done? So could we get like a monthly or 2 monthly, whatever it's easier to do? How many work orders, how many have been completed? Not that we have to have a listing of it, but one of the things we hear, you and I have done so many things. There's so many things you did. One of the things, I'll say with the maintenance, when I was at Preston High, there were a lot of things never went through a work order. I would get a hold of Mr. Murray and say, help, it's 1:30, I've got a ball game at 3, I need help, I had help. Okay, but I think we need to, so people can understand how much work is being done. I think that's one of the issues. I mean, we don't have to have, I don't need to know at Preston High you spent 15 days there. But if we had 300 work orders, 250 was able to be done this month, but we're waiting on parts for 50 jobs or whatever. You see what I'm saying?
We,
This receipt book that he was talking about would come in handy, because when they enter the school, they'll go fix whatever, or order parts for whatever, and they'll have a copy, and then they'll leave a copy of this with the principal, or the secretary, or whoever, when they exit, and it'll say on there, change 6 light bulbs, had to order 12 more, or working on HVAC, need to order whatever part, or none, or whatever. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do. The only part I'm looking at is with the public, because one of the things we get land-based, that it's not being done, blah, blah, blah. Well, if I have documentation, I can say, hey, they've done this many work orders. I don't necessarily, for the school staff, that would be huge. So if a teacher complained, you've got that book, I get that.
we actually have a way of determining that. I mean, last year, for instance, we did 975 work orders submitted. Okay? We have approximately 219 of them that says they're open. They're not necessarily open, they could be duplicates. It could be little stuff that the guys didn't sign off on, you know. But, I mean, the safety ones that come in first is always a
Absolutely.
top priority, no matter what.
Absolutely.
But out of that 975, if you actually had all of them that was submitted, that's about a third.
But we're not,
Of what actually comes in.
that was my next question, is why are we not entering something for things that are being done without a work order being placed? Like, how would we know, looking at your metrics, that a third of all the time spent is on the HVAC at Terre Haute East Preston School if we're not entering the ones that are emergencies that are never getting entered?
Well, we can enter some of those. I mean, somebody's got to designate time to go back and do it. And sometimes when you get into emergency, it may not get, entered in there. We try to tell the staff, when the principal's there and say, hey, while you're here, do this, we try to have them go ahead and enter that work order so we can sign off on it.
So your goal is then, to have them
Our goal is
entered?
that, and I think with Ms. Hooten coming up with this receipt book, this is going to help out
That's a
tremendously.
great idea.
But the
That'll be
receipt's
a
gonna go to the secretary, which means for a teacher, the teacher who had the issue, to know about it, they're gonna have to actually go bother a secretary to find out, correct? I mean, that's my concern, is you went digital to try to streamline so that more people could be informed. As soon as you go to receipt, you go back to a single bottleneck that somebody has to search out to get information from, correct?
Typically, I would think that that's, as an example, in the school, I would think, I'm assuming here, I would think when it's done, that person, if I was one to put it in, typically, and I'm gonna use Mr. Murray, he would say, I've got it completed. And if it was one of the coaches, I would go tell the coach, hey, that's done.
So the receipt book will say who the requester was. It'll say who the requester was on it, so they'll know who they need to report back to. So they can just throw it in the mailbox of the
Right,
of the
and when
person.
administrators put them in, they usually do put who asked for it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how the guys find the rooms, they give a room number, a teacher's name, so forth.
Yeah, obviously, in the classroom things, the teacher's gonna be there and be aware, more concerned about things
Yeah,
that are
we're-
across, but yeah.
We're still learning some of this new, I mean, we've come a long ways. In 30-some years, trust me, we've come a long ways.
Yeah.
It started out with a 3-copy thing. You dropped one at the office, you dropped one at the board office, and you kept a copy. So we've come a long ways in this process.
Does your system that you're using give you metrics as far as per school? Do you classify things like HVAC, electrical, wood, floors, or anything, or it's just an open script of just whatever the memo has?
It's just an open script, and I can get you a copy of that, but it comes through Mr. Sines over here.
Yeah, we do not use a paid program for this. It does create it's basically a forms-based program. It creates an Excel-based database, which can be then sorted, for example, so you can see.
So Excel could give you something.
Work associated by site, yes.
Yeah.
You can absolutely manipulate the Excel portion of it.
Go by school, but really not typically like by HVAC or whatever. He can make it go by each school and how many work.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the metric allows the user.
The only thing that I think the hangup is you can't read, if you're out there and you put in a work order, then you can't go back in to see the status of that. To my knowledge. I don't think they can go back in and check it. That's the only reason that we talked about, okay, let's do the receipt book. It says, guys are leaving, they can say, hey, I did this, and drop it off. So then, and really, the principal needs to know what's going on in their building.
Right.
And then,
You can't, when you have people saying that something's not, I don't know, that there's a ceiling tile out in my classroom, and thinking that if, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, so let's put in like 3 or 4 work orders over this one ceiling tile.
Yeah.
This happens. So then you've got all of this, in different schools with people putting in all these different work orders. That's why it needs to be ran through the principal.
No, that's fine. I've seen systems where the administration would approve it before it would ever make it to your desk, which would alleviate the same thing, but it prevents the principal from having to actually be, or whoever that one person is, from having to find the time to enter it. That's all I was asking. But do you know the oldest open item in your queue? Do we have things in there that are 5 years old? Is everything within the past 3 months? Do we have any idea?
I don't think we've got any issues in there that's 5
Oh, I just was curious, like if we knew what the oldest open. My mother has a list of things she'd like me to fix about myself that's much older than 5 years. So there are certainly things that get put to the side. I just was.
There is things that get put to the side.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on the request.
Yeah.
You know, we have a lot of teachers that may be in this room this year, that room next year, and all of a sudden they want all the furniture changed over here. Well, that's kind of an in-house thing, you know. I move a lot of furniture in my house.
Yeah.
I don't plan on moving a lot of it here. We do move a lot of it here, though, for the students.
I don't want the guy trained in HVAC moving
The
desks.
worst part that we have with the system that we have now on the iPads is the stuff don't drop off of it once it's done. So the guys, I mean, if they had to order a part and it took 3 weeks to get a part, and 3 weeks is very common anymore. The biggest thing they have to do is keep scrolling back so that they can sign off on that.
If they're well-versed in Excel, I mean, for example, you could sort by date to jump to, I mean, there's ways to do it. I mean, I
Yeah,
think that's just more, so we probably need to sit down and provide a little more
Sit
training.
down and just kind of drop those things off that they're complete, you know, but,
Well, everything's limited by budget and time, but if you're spending a ton of time with guys that are not tech savvy trying to roll back through, it may be worth the budget in purchasing software that's more meant for task management that gives you those abilities. But I'm just as curious where you thought you were at on that.
yeah, I mean, we've had, you go back to that 5 years, we've had things that's probably been asked for 5 years. We just didn't have the money to go about getting them.
All right, so there are open items that could be years old, but we could essentially put them into a status of budgetary or something that just says this isn't gonna happen. It's, I mean, until we win the lottery.
I don't think, as an example, there's not something safety-wise.
Right,
You know,
right,
that's-
right.
Well,
None of the
can I jump in
necessities.
here real quick? First of all, do we have a work session scheduled on this? I think I requested that, or?
I don't have one scheduled yet. Mr. Tatum was honest on the 8th with the pending matters of curriculum, and there was also a request for finance.
Okay, well, I'd like
I
to.
wanted to have Mr. Murray here to have an opportunity for you.
That's great, I appreciate it. I mean, this conversation seems like it's limited mostly to the work order system, and maintenance, which is what I requested, is much bigger than that. So I would like to have a maintenance.
I can certainly look, what I would try to do, and if this is the will of the board, I'd like to try to typically schedule these work sessions in advance of the regularly scheduled meeting.
That's fine.
I think that's typically for the public to potentially attend as well.
I'm just saying, a time of the essence, I mean, and then everyone, respectful efficiency, I mean, could be a very long discussion, but it's much bigger than just the work order system.
Sure.
So we'll get that scheduled?
Yeah.
Okay, after I was elected, but before I was a member, I think there was a conversation at this board where, Mr. Zigray, you brought up doors that don't latch in the school system.
Yes.
Have those doors been fixed?
To my knowledge, some of them, but not all of them. But weren't we putting out a big bid on a bunch of doors that we were going to change out? Or am I wrong about that, Matt?
Yeah, we're in the process of doing that at Preston High. Is there a building totally secure? I'll be honest with you, no. Because you can go around, trust me, I got lots of calls from the deputies every night. Whenever they was going on the regular rotation, they would go to every school and just jerk doors open. You jerk hard enough on a door, you can get it open. Well, then somebody's gotta go so they can check the building out. Our problem is, we have so many evening activities going on at every location. You got teachers walking out that blocks the doors, and it's not just teachers, it's staff. But if there is an issue with a lockdown at night, yes, we get a call and we go work on it to where the normal person walking up can't get in the building. But if you really went in the building and jerk hard enough, you could probably get in about any building we have. I could do that anywhere.
Well, I mean, I think there's a big difference between yanking on a door and breaking in. I mean, I feel like a door should be secure enough that 99% of people can.
Most of our doors are secure enough, but you've got doors that, just take Preston High for instance. You got 1,400 kids going through those doors 7 times a day. A lot of them don't even use their hands to open them, they kick them.
I can see that with that door there, that it seems like it happens a lot. But my point being is that I think having doors that secure that cannot be opened by a person yanking on a door is a priority.
Well, it is a priority. I mean, I can't tell you that every door that you go and jerk open will be secure. And I'm talking, if you jerk hard enough, you could jerk some of them open. The kids, they're real good about, they even tape the darn thing shut. You know, they put a little pebble down in the bottom of it to where when it goes shut, it is latched, that's your first thing, but if you jerk hard enough, you know, it could come open. But most of it is, like I said, they've got creative over the years. I mean, they can put individual tape on there, they get the little rocks are the best. They put the little rock in the bottom so that it almost latches tight up. If you go up and pull one a little bit, it's secure, but if you jerk hard enough, it will come open.
Mr. Tatum, one thing I would add is Mr. Bettinger, who was recently hired as our safety and emergency preparedness coordinator, is in process of meeting. He's not here today, but he's actually out of town today. One, he is meeting with all building administrators and certainly trying to identify any potential issues, vulnerabilities, so those can be properly communicated to Mr. Murray so we can get those addressed. I would think if there's any known doors that we are not able to currently secure, that is a work in progress that we want to get established before the start of school.
I mean, I'm calling them secure. I can't tell you that they're totally secure.
That's fine, but for my memory of the meeting, I don't have notes in front of me, but we were talking front doors of school buildings that hadn't been able to lock for years. Well, that was in this public meeting, it was said.
Yeah. The front door.
I mean, it's never come to my knowledge that we've got doors that's been years that doesn't lock.
The front
We've got
door.
doors that are problems.
Yeah, the front door at Kingwood Elementary has been a problem for 2 or 3 years, to the point the
But when
last.
you lock it, isn't it?
No, we chain locked it the last time. When I went on a trip, the door was actually chain locked because it wasn't closing. So, and I understand it's a money issue too. I mean, they cost what, $70,000 to replace one door?
I don't know. Most of your hardware is $1,000. A penny bar like that's $1,000, not counting the door. Most of the issue is all exterior doors are concreted in. It's not a simple unbolt, unnail job. Plus, most of them are custom fit. So you gotta call and get a custom fit door. You can't go to Ace Hardware, you can't go to Lowe's and get a door. These are not common sized doors, these steel doors that's in the school building.
I understand that, and I want to say, and I think you guys are doing a great job. I mean, as far as how much you have to do with how limited the resources are and with the fact that buildings are constantly going to deteriorate because that's what they do. It's a gigantic job. And so that's why I'd like to reiterate, we need to have a work session where we can get into the details so that we can have these issues on a schedule for preventative maintenance. Such things as like the front of the vocational school, to my eyes, looks like it hasn't been pressure washed ever, but has it? I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I mean, if we're gonna get in, I can't tell you when it was pressure washed, but if we're gonna get into preventative measure schedule, I need 25 more guys. At least, if we're gonna get into all preventative maintenance.
But we can make a list and start prioritizing and see what we could do with 2 or 3 or 5 men. We can do something. We don't have to have the perfect as an excuse not to be doing something.
Right, and like I said, all safety issues are taken care of. If I've ever gotten word that there was any doors that wasn't secure, we went and,
Well, that was said in this meeting.
we may have went and taken chains and put there that night until we could work on it the next day.
Is that the case, Mr. Zigray?
Yeah, it is, but, I'm not putting Matt under the rug here. We don't have enough money. And it's just like, I got a couple light bulbs changed in one of the teachers' room because I knew the kid, I had him in class, and we went down to the hardware store and got some light bulbs. But my understanding is we're not one light bulb behind, we're 3 generations of light bulbs behind in a lot of our schools. And we just don't have the money to buy them, right?
Well, right now, we're in the process of all of our light lights that we've been putting in for the past 2 years, 3 years since we've had the levy have all been LED lights. Simply because we don't have to buy the ballast
Right.
anymore. There's a little increase up front in the bulb, but you're not buying the ballast when it goes out. They're better lights, you know. We just spent $1,400 last week on 7 cases of bulbs. And I mean, that's crazy. I mean, and that's all they had. I need a skid. I got 7 cases, and it was $1,400. And that's on our state bid contract. I'm on my 3rd different kind of wax this year because I can't get enough of one kind of wax to do our buildings. So we're on our 3rd kind, and I'm hoping that some comes in this week so we can finish the buildings. But right now, it's just, it's a terrible time to do any new construction, any maintenance. I mean, I feel bad telling some of these people it'll be 10 to 12 weeks before I get a part. And I don't know what else to do because that's what they're telling me. There is no more HVAC equipment this year. You had to order anything you needed by June 15th of this year to get it by December. So, I mean, even the parts for it. But that's why we're trying to do a lot of our HVAC work. We're getting into where we are putting it on the computers. We're able to see it. We're able to monitor it a lot better. You know, so we've kind of got a handle on the HVAC equipment. The doors, I mean, like I said, if there's any that don't work right now, that won't at least secure, I'm not aware of them. We have issues with a lot of the same ones. Kingwood Elementary, these doors over here, they're bowed out. The ones need replaced. Of course, that's the MIP project coming up, but I mean, trust me, if the deputies go around the school, they'll find a door. They'll get a door open one way or another. And a lot of it's the teachers leaving out at night. A lot of it's the kids doing it. But usually, once we hear about a door issue, we do take care of it immediately, especially with the lockdowns now that we have in place.
Okay, and then one last request. When we have this work session, can you provide us, Mr. Murray, with a list of things that are limiting you? So if it's just funding or if it's materials, then that's a little bit harder. But what areas can the board help you, and how can we establish a better partnership with the principals and parents and community members and students to help maintain the schools?
Can you bring the paddle back?
One thing I would like to
true.
speak to that point there, Mr. Murray, is, I mean, he's actually working in conjunction with a school improvement group at the high school that I know has already scheduled work session this week, Matthew, correct? And we're looking to get them, you know, whatever materials they've requested to use. I know they have a follow-up session that they're going to incorporate a group from Mountaineer Challenge Academy to come in for some targeted projects at the high school as well. So, I mean, those type of things we're very much, you know, interested in entering into, and the fact that, you know, we want to certainly work in conjunction with the public and other organizations that can assist, because as you said, it is a very daunting task. You know, all of the various needs on this front are huge. So any additional assistance is certainly helpful.
Yeah, and so I think, once again, this work session, I think we can be creative with it. Mr. Seymour talked about creating a school culture, but I think students can do more in that regards. Like, say, for example, a magic eraser in 5 minutes would clean that door. And I think a student can be involved in those processes, because I think if a student cleaned that door in 5 minutes, they probably wouldn't use their feet to kick the door open as much. And so this is a very long-term process. But I think through your department, we can work with the students and the principals and the faculty and the community to long-term, 5, 10 years from now, to make your job easier and create appreciation by the people that use the facilities for the amount of work it takes for you all to fix problems.
You're in charge of building and grounds. I assume, and you made a comment about not moving furniture. So custodial staff does not report to you?
Yes and no. When school's in, the custodial staff are under their principals and administrators at their school.
Okay.
In the summertime, some of our principals have different contracts. So pretty much they fall under me as far as their cleaning schedules and so forth, of what we gotta get done to the buildings.
Okay.
So kinda, I guess I inherit them from June to August.
Okay.
There are some buildings that have extended administrative staff. The high school, West Preston and Brewston have extended.
Yeah, if they're on staff, they're still in charge. If they're not, then they're not. Makes sense.
Mr.
Yeah.
Murray does
Yeah,
coordinate
and we
our
send,
summer
in
cleaning
the
schedule.
summertime, we send maintenance guys out on days that, like early in the mornings to help the custodians move their stuff out in the room or the hallways so they can do certain cleanings, but Brad's been able to get, I forget how many additional people you brought on.
14 plus 11 that are on
14 for
extended
the summer,
contracts.
we have them strung out, so it's kind of, alleviated a lot of the maintenance guys having to go move the rooms out so the custodian can do it, so we've been concentrating on all the painting projects and the normal summer stuff that we do.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yep, anything else?
Mr. Murray, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, do we have anything to be on next agenda?
I just have a couple questions. We don't meet with Mr. Bittinger until October. Is there any way we could meet with, I know he's new and he's just like, he's got stuff to do, but
See if we can accelerate and get him.
like before school starts, because
Is that?
I think there needs to be some things
safety
implemented, like, I mean, I understand that, it's the students putting the pebbles and rocks in and teachers going in and out doors. So we need to work with our principals to try to eliminate that. And there need to be checkpoints and certain teachers check at night. Only certain entrances and exits used, period. It's not like to get to your car because it's raining right now. That one's quicker. But programs like that or things like that he could help.
Ms. Feathers, I can see if we can afford Mr. Bittinger, or I know that he is addressing at our administrative academy on the second, I believe it's, Ms. Slayton, what day is Mike scheduled to speak at the administrative? So it's August 2nd? So that would even afford an opportunity, I mean, if you certainly want to come to Blackwater, I mean, he's going to be updating and speaking with administrators from 3 to 4. But I can look to get him to see if he can get a presentation pulled together with his work thus far. In terms of what his initial plans are to incorporate. I mean, right now, he's just trying to wrap his head, I mean, he started.
Right,
July
no,
9th.
I understand.
So he is simply just trying to get an opportunity to meet with all administration, walk the buildings, from a protocol standpoint from coming here, get initial protocols in, get our initial plans submitted with the idea that those plans are ultimately a continual work in progress.
Right. I mean, I think we all agree that an unlocked door is like your first defense. But if the entire door needs replaced because it won't lock, and that's a budget thing, but I can go down to the hardware store and I can buy $10 worth of hardware that it's not gonna look the best, but I can lock that door. Just because we don't have the funds right now or there's steps that we have to go through, I think initially we have to make sure the door is
Well,
locked.
I don't know of any, I mean, and I, like I said, could speak to Mr. Murray, I don't know of any door that we can't lock, again.
And I would just like to.
We need to try to take measures to batten those down, like you said, as much as possible.
Yeah, and as a parent, I would rather, when I ask you, I would rather you say, I don't know of any door. I want you to tell me every door is locked.
Well,
And I know that.
I know of no pending issues in terms of, like, we've had kids in summer school, I have no reported pending issues with a door that cannot be secured.
Okay.
When you're saying that you'd like us to meet with Mr. Bittinger before, I mean, again, I know part of it is he's figuring out his own job description. I mean, for layman's terms, like there's just, we've never had one, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of unknowns he's figuring out. Do you feel like there's just a list of things that we need to present to him, or you have questions that you wanted him to come potentially to discuss, or subject matters to discuss?
I just feel like there's some obvious things that we need to put into place before the first day of school. I mean, obviously, like, there's a grander picture, and we're just starting out. But your first line of defense is an entryway. So in order to secure your entryways, and it doesn't just mean the lock on it, it means controlling who comes in and out of them, who checks to make sure they're locked at night, and that there's no pebbles in them or whatever. This is going to be the responsibility of every principal and their teachers and staff. They might have to walk around the building to use the main entrance, but that stops, the use of doors so they don't get jammed open or whatever. I mean, I think it's those simple things that need put into place before day one. And then moving forward, you know, he's gonna have a grander scale. I understand that.
In my discussions with Mr. Bettinger, I mean, the types of things you're discussing are exactly what, you know, he's
Okay.
ultimately wanting to incorporate with the administrators. He has not had a chance to collectively address our administrators, but certainly we can, you know, obviously October's late. I'll certainly see if we can do anything to at least get a report in for where he's at in terms of some of his initial points of emphasis in advance of the school year.
Mr. Murray?
Yeah, I was just gonna make the point that Brad just did, I mean, those things that you're talking about, we do those now. The custodian, the last thing they're supposed to do before they get off is walk around the building, make sure the doors are closed, so forth. That works fine, unless you have a staff member that's still in the building after hours, which I know Mike is going to start talking to the principals, and that's the first thing on his agenda, is to get the staff to buy in that just because you took that class out for recess, that door still needs locked.
Yeah.
It can't be propped open, so I know Mike is definitely working on that.
And the same way, if they are here after hours, they have to use one entrance. And it's just we're just gonna have to get acclimated to doing that. And no tolerance policy. I mean, it's the safety of the students, and that has to come first. Probably not a real popular statement, but.
I agree with Ms. Feathers.
Any other items on the agenda that Mr. Martin needs to add at this time?
I think we need to put on like whatever the time frame is, every 1 month, every 2 months, student academic achievement as a regular line item.
Is there any way on our agendas that we do have reports from our staff that they could be moved above all of the other business of order? Because I know we've kept them today quite a while from their regular job. I mean, I don't know if that would be helpful, if it would be appreciated.
Yeah, Mr. Murray, for sure.
How many things did you not check off that list today, Mr. Murray?
Well, we intended for you to sit here this long.
Yeah, I mean, we could look at adjustment on placement. This was a lot of
It
discussion
was,
this
yeah,
week
but
today.
if we anticipate that, if
Good meeting.
there's any way we can move them.
Might have to drive fast to Charleston.
You didn't tell me that. Any other things for the agenda? Hearing none. I'll entertain a motion for,
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
thank you, for adjournment. It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion on adjournment? Ms. Feathers, vote yes.
No problem.
Voting is open.
You guys that's been in here, thank you.
Yes.
I know it's been a long day, but you are appreciated. Even you, Mr. Murray.
Motion passes 5-0. Meeting adjourned at 1:40.